It's Tuesday, September 24th, and this is the work session for the Board of Commissioners, and up first is the Construction and Demolition Ordinance Update with Kathy and Brian. Welcome.
That's right. I'm Brian Pettit. I'm the Public Works Director. I'm here with Kathy Hall, Manager of the Center here in Pitkin County. And again, this is just an update. We really don't need any decisions today, but we want to make sure we're heading the right direction, both from a process standpoint and from a functional standpoint on what we're coming up with. We hope to be back to the board later this year for decision making. But this is an initiative and a directive by the Board of County Commissioners for us to divert construction and demolition debris from the landfill. As you know, it's the largest constituent that we are currently burying at the landfill, and by diverting it, we would save landfill life and greenhouse gas production. We have worked with ComDev closely and the building department through a series of meetings, and then we had 2 stakeholder meetings where we gathered their information, and Kathy actually has revised our pricing strategy for a tiered structure based on that feedback. And through that, and reaching out to other people that are doing this type of diversion, she's also found a tracking system that we'd like it to institute in 2020. But with that, Kathy will go through the details of what we will be proposing.
All right, thanks, Brian. So just to recap, why do we need it? 58% of the material buried in the Pitkin County landfill is construction and demolition waste. National average is 20%, so we put an inordinate amount of C&D into the landfill. Based on a visual study we did in 2016, 35% of that C&D material could possibly be diverted through our current diversion programs at the landfill. 56% of that, 58% of the C&D going in, 56% is engineered wood and drywall. Right now in the state of Colorado, it cannot be diverted. There are no current markets for it. But state of Colorado is taking on some initiatives to sort of develop markets for C&D. So it's just a breakdown of the C&D material. Again, you see treated engineered wood and drywall as the biggest constituents. However, we get a lot of asphalt roofing shingles, cardboard. There's a lot of cardboard in construction demolition loads. Organics are a small part of it. Concrete. Concrete is a big section. We divert concrete and create a concrete aggregate product. And scrap metal. Again, all of these are currently diverted at the landfill. So we're looking at a proposed ordinance, and we're working with ComDev, as Brian said. They have a stakeholder group for their land use energy code working group that we've partnered up with and gotten feedback from them as well. And through that initial stakeholder group, as well as the 2 we've held over the last couple weeks, we're looking at a 25% diversion rate on construction demolition projects. And what that would be tied to is a deposit system at the time of permitting. So you go into ComDev, you get your permit for your demo or construction project. You will sign an acknowledgement stating that, yes, the county is expecting you to divert 25% of your waste from that site, that job site. So we're looking at maximum pricing in the tiered structure for mixed loads. So if you bring us, that picture is a good indicator. You bring us a mixed load with stuff that could be diverted, you will pay the maximum tiered price structure. And I have a breakdown of the tier pricing in a little bit. And then we're going to do waste tracking and reporting. At the end of your job project permit, you will be required to submit a report. And we're looking at a software system that will make it pretty automatic. So the required divertible materials, again, this is everything that we currently do at the Solid Waste Center. Cardboard, concrete, porcelain toilets, sinks, those can go into the concrete. We make a 1-inch aggregate product. Metal appliances, asphalt, rock and dirt, metal, Singlestream Recycling, and organics.
Kathy?
Yeah.
What will include for Singlestream Recycling?
It's the same. We haven't changed anything. So it's plastics containers numbers 1 through 7, tin and aluminum cans, cardboard, mixed paper, the newspaper, white paper, office paper, glass, milk cartons, a whole list.
Okay. I asked that because I know the Rio Grande Center has sort of separated out what they're now considering single-stream recycling.
Correct. They're going to more kind of unique divertibles because single stream is like us in Pickens County. It is included in the curbside recycling. So they're trying to drive people to the curbside for your traditional single stream recycling.
Yeah. I know it's a new program, and I see some from the city here. Do we know how that's working?
Liz like to come up and
I can tell you how it's working at my trash dumpster.
Hi, I'm Liz Chapman. I'm with the City of Aspen, and I am managing the changeover at the Rio Grande Recycle Center. And I have heard from a number of inside City of Aspen residents and outside City of Aspen residents that this change has impacted their personal service. So to answer your question, George, how is it working? It's a mixed bag in terms of how it is working. As people learn the system, they are adapting to that, and we've had some very positive reception. The main concern that most people have is that we are maintaining a place to put cardboard. Because although cardboard is accepted in the single stream recycling, it takes up a lot of space, and it's hard to put out with your curbside recycling because it gets to be so large and bulky. So people are very relieved that there's a place to put cardboard. What is causing more consternation among our citizens is that we no longer have a place to put plastics or mixed paper, low-grade papers. And the reason we don't have that is because there's no market in Colorado for those products. So we're limiting what we can take at the center to things that we can process in Colorado: glass, metal, yard waste, which we can process right here at Kathy's or y'all's facility at the landfill. Cardboard we've kept because, as the study we all did together a few years ago showed, 33% of what is brought to the center is cardboard. It is also going to be the most expensive thing. To keep cardboard recycling at the recycle center is going to be upwards of $200,000 a year. We're doing that because that seems to meet a need for the citizens. If we were going to add those low-grade papers, newspapers, magazines, and plastics, then the price tag became close to $800,000 a year, which was, the city decided was too high a price to pay, especially considering both in Pickens County and in the city of Aspen, you're required as a trash hauler to also provide curbside recycling. And you can put mixed paper and plastics along with metals and glass in that single stream. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's good. One quick follow-up.
Yeah.
Regarding the cardboard, are you still seeing a lot of commercial drop-offs for the cardboard? Because that was always sort of an issue, and I don't know if you're addressing that to try to steer them to the landfill.
So what we see at the recycle center is, in terms of numbers, it's individuals. If we're counting the number of vehicles that come in, far and away we have more personal vehicles coming in with household recycling. If we're talking about actual amount of volume, then it swings over to the commercial sector, because we have a number of businesses that rely on recycling cardboard at the recycle center, and when they come, they bring a lot at once, a whole van full, a whole truck full. Yes, we are trying to steer them to using the landfill's facilities, but we've run into two big problems there. The number one problem is they tell us that they don't have space in their commercial facility to locate a cardboard dumpster, and so their choice is to bring it to the Rio or to trash it, because they just don't have the space to collect it on their site. And it's a time thing for them to send their people all the way to the landfill. Depending on traffic, that can be anywhere from an hour journey to, sometimes it can be 3 hours to get in and out if traffic is really bad. And for them, it's worth the 15 minutes to pay their people to bring it to the recycle center. It's not worth that extra hour and a half to pay their people to take it all the way to the landfill. But any place where they might have space, we are doing our best, both in HOAs and in businesses, to facilitate them getting curbside recycling established on their site. And we hope by this time next year, the demand for use at the Rio Grande for cardboard will be reduced. But it's going to take us a little bit to get there.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Liz, and Kathy, sorry for the little sidebar there.
Well, and can I?
But Patty, you also had a question.
Yeah, we've had issues at Smuggler at our dumpsters People, which was new to me, people who like the single stream don't have room in their little homes to separate it out. So they used to just take it, they would bring it down to the Rio Grande,
Yeah.
their single stream. So our dumpsters for that first couple of weeks were outrageously out of control. I mean, we had I have pictures that are horrible. And then for some reason, because there was so much, the hauler wouldn't pick it up. So it just kept growing. It was like it multiplied overnight like rabbits. I mean, it was unbelievable. So I think we're on the right track and we've worked it out. I sent pictures to our property manager and said, you've got to do something about this. I mean,
Well, and I dealt a little bit with that. I contacted your hauler directly because I heard from other residents that was a problem, and encouraged them to comply with the rules as they are written before we force them to do that. And they expressed to me that there was some misunderstanding and that there was a lower level of service than what was actually needed, and I think they were able to work that out. So I hope that I've not heard in the last week that it's still a problem, so I'm hopeful that means it's been resolved.
I think internally it's improved, but we've also had people, they're known to have parties at the Molly Gibson Park and then bring all their plastic stuff and all their stuff down to our recycling bins.
Yeah, so something we're encouraging.
We're working on it.
All of the HOAs, not just the Smuggler, but there are similar problems at other places, is we really encourage people to lock their trash facilities so that you don't have that subject to people who are not paying their fair share taking advantage of the service.
I don't know if they're going to figure that out, but I don't know.
I know we've got a limited amount of time, and you've got a lot to get through.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
So through our stakeholder group meetings, so the tiered pricing structure shifted from the last time I met with you. So the haulers, the construction companies, they kind of came back and said the tier 1 I had at 0 to 10 tons. Tier 2 was 10 to 20 tons. So they're like, that's a little tight. So we expanded it to 0 to 30 tons, 31 to 60 tons, 61 tons and greater. Tier 4 is reserved for the mixed loads. You're bringing in more than 5% contamination in your construction demo dumpster or your trailer. If we see more than 5% of divertible materials in there, you pay the maximum Tier 4 tipping. And through our stakeholder meetings, everybody was agreeable with that. We've gotten some very good positive feedback as well from the construction companies. A couple have told me that they're actually tired of throwing away all of this stuff, so they would like to see a little bit more of a kind of not a forced, but sort of a forced diversion. So
Strongly encouraged.
yes, strongly encouraged. That's a better, more positive term. Also, we heard from some architects who are in support of this as well. And I want to step back to the deposit system. Initially, we started out as square footage. If you're doing a 1,000 square foot job, your deposit would be based on that as well. And then through actually ComDev, they said, well, why don't we base it on the amount of waste they estimate bringing up? Because demo jobs certainly have higher amount of trash than a new construction job. So that's why we did it that way. And apparently in the construction industry, you can estimate if I'm doing a new construction of 1,000 square feet, they pretty much know how much waste they're gonna have. So that deposit system will be based on that. Now, how are we gonna track all of this? There's a system called Green Halo. And it's used throughout mostly California. California is way far ahead of us on construction and demolition diversion. We would actually be one of the first in Colorado to really have a good, significant, meaty ordinance to do this. So we tracked down this Green Halo system, and it's actually a tracking and reporting software system. Very reasonably priced. Everybody we actually talked to City of Palo Alto, and they said it changed their lives. You know, there's no paper tracking. It's all done electronically. And how it works is, so you go in to get your permit through community development. You would sign up, do this, and your permit would be attached to this Green Halo system tracking. The job would get a QR code specifically that if you're bringing waste in from the job site, it can either be on a phone or a piece of paper. We would scan it at the landfill. We would be attached to the Green Halo system at ComDev. It automatically tracks the waste or weights of diversion and everything just through that scanned QR code in our scale house system at the landfill. You can do real live time tracking based on a permit or job number. You can see here, there's 3 examples of a permit. And so that person or construction company or construction manager can actually track and see what they're doing. Again, this is all tied into the landfill scale system. Now, if you decide, oh, I've got a bunch of scrap metal, I'm gonna go right to Trinity, you can, a contractor could manually enter in that ticket. You can scan the ticket in and attach it to the system. So it's all done very automatically, pretty much pain-free. The other great thing about it is this tracks county waste diversion overall. So we can go in and through the dashboard set up through the county's Green Halo site, anybody can go in and see, this is Palo Alto's, what our diversion is looking like, what has been wasted in tons. And so it's a great way to track greenhouse gas emissions saved. Pretty sophisticated system, easy to use. And it presents all these graphs and tables in a variety of forms, so you can get down to the nitty gritty of exactly what was diverted.
And these are public access, so the public can come in and they can monitor what's been happening and study it. For instance, if a school class wanted to study it, and it's all available.
Exactly, and it can
Great.
key us into what's working, what's not working as well. Yeah.
Kelly has a question.
I do. So with the 25% requirement, is that overall? Or?
Mike? I don't think they were turned on.
There you go.
With the 25% requirement that's being proposed for the ordinance, would that be within each type of material or overall for their total weight load?
Overall for the total weight load, and we clarified through the stakeholder meetings, it's the general number 1 permit ComDev calls it. So the whole job. So if you're tearing down and rebuilding a house, we had some roofers and they're like, we don't generate that much waste. So how can we be expected to get to 25%? Well, then ComDev clarified, well, it's under the general permit. So the general permit building this house, the roofer, per se, for his roofing job isn't going to be required to do 25%, but what he can divert and the waste he generates falls under that general number 1 permit.
So the general contractor has sort of the responsibility for orchestrating.
Exactly. So they need to track land clearing where they're excavating and digging. That would be exempted as well, like the roofers. However, it would account towards the overall project total numbers for the general permit. Looking at coming back to meet with you, I'm hoping by the end of October, early November, and we'll actually have the ordinance language in a draft form. First, second readings, November, December. It becomes code, if you like it, becomes an ordinance or a code in January. I feel like we really need to give it 6-7 months to roll out, get people educated, develop educational materials. And through that 6-7 month process of rolling it out, we see what's working or not, giving ourselves some leeway to say, this isn't quite right, so we'll make some adjustments. So we're hoping if everything goes smoothly, by July of next year, we'll be fully implemented.
Okay. Other questions?
I have a quick question. Back to the picture of the Palo Alto. What is that in front of their city hall?
It's like some,
Is that recycled
some sculpture.
demolition waste? I know, sorry, I just had to ask. I didn't know if that was something we had inserted in there or if it was something they really built. But
Yeah, I haven't been to Palo Alto
Just
in
a quick
several
question,
years,
thank
so
you.
I don't
Kelly
know.
has a question.
Wasn't there when I was there.
yeah.
Maybe it's made of silicon. I couldn't help but noticing in their permit tracking, they have numbers as high as 80% required. So I'm just wondering, who's doing this best? What markets do we have market failure here for the types of materials we need to eventually divert?
Yeah, so California has a lot of end-use markets. So it's the wood and the drywall that's kind of giving everybody headaches right now to get rid of. So California is certainly leading the way. They have actually a statewide mandate that each of these communities like Palo Alto and all that have to put in C&D diversion ordinances. We have a lot of end markets. We're looking at next year in 2020 buying a grinder for the site for brush and all that, which we'll bring up in the 2020 budget. But if we can get clean wood, not painted, not stained, not pressure treated, we could divert that as well and make a mulch. That's some kind of use for it. There's the gypsum waste to energy plant where they're biofuels plant where they're burning. A little more conversation. They're on and off. So,
They get caught in a political web over there, I think.
yeah. If that kind of became a little more reliable for untreated wood, we could grind it up and send it down there for biofuels. The gypsum plants, they're a little funny as well. They'll take back gypsum and recycle it, but they only want their gypsum back to recycle it. So you can imagine how hard it is to, once a house is demoed, where did that gypsum come from?
Yeah, I noticed on the Palo Alto one that they recycled clean, unpainted drywall, which I presume would be the scraps from when they're doing a new job. They could take that back. And presumably, if someone got it from the gypsum plant on a construction site, they could take the scraps back then.
American Gypsum, who has their closest facility to us, is in Phoenix or Arizona somewhere. They're willing to take anybody's drywall. It's just a matter of getting it there. So
Yeah.
again, things to think about. They're pretty
Long, heavy
innovative
haul.
ways. We'll certainly keep an eye on.
Could I ask a question about plastics? I know it's come up a couple times. Before the meeting, we were talking about there are people who are starting companies, startups for taking plastics of all types, recycling them into construction materials, and entrepreneurial ventures that sound really interesting. Will we have the capacity for a change if we have the bandwidth out there? If, say, all of a sudden there's a market or an industry that would like to come in and work with us on taking our plastics and turning it into something before it just gets sent off to who knows where, do we have the ability, the capacity to work with them?
Yeah, it would
Not
be
knowing what that means yet.
it would be a change in the way we handle it. Again, we went to Singlestream back in 2014. It could be a way, hey, we'll take plastics, however you got to separate them. So it'd just be educating the public on, I know we told you to do it this one way, but
We may have something new may come of this, we
you never
hope.
know.
Yeah, and
Brian?
I just, back to Kelly's question too, is all of the programs that we're trying to put into place right now we have existing diversion programs for them. So we would hope that in the future, if we can develop new programs, new end markets, that we could increase that diversion rate and those targets higher than 25%. So I know that where you're going toward, and we just don't have the end markets here, especially in the central mountains of Colorado. It's just not available.
But Greg's question of note is if there was, which I know there's all kinds of fabric manufacturers now looking at shoes and clothes and increasing the use of recycled plastics. That just gives the place where we're sending it now a market for what they sort out down in Denver. And I know now they're just stashing big volumes of it, waiting for those markets to ripen and then ship it off. So we'd still be able to do that. We just couldn't actually ship it from here without going back to the users and saying, oh, by the way, now you got to sort, which we don't know how that would go over.
Yeah, if there was certainly a market that developed, Waste Management would be more than happy to ship them plastics.
Yeah, because they're stacking them
They're
up.
struggling right now, for sure.
Well, thank you. What else have you got?
That's it. We'll
Right on
hopefully be
time.
back late October, early November with the actual draft language.
Okay, thanks for coming. It's looking good,
Getting there.
interesting.
Yeah.
We'll stay tuned.
Thanks, Kathy.
We're gonna
Thanks,
get moved.
Talked about for a while now, and which is closure gates on Prince Creek Road and Dinkle Lake roads. So just briefly, I want to go through what we want to talk to the board about today, and we are looking for some direction from the board for the next step, which is we're going to talk about our current seasonal closure condition in Pitkin County on all county roads. Talk about historic county gates. We'll talk about Prince Creek and Dinkle Lake roads and our historic approach to closing these roads. The problem with that situation right now, and it's been expanding over the last 5 years, the process that we've gone through to determine this recommendation, and then we'll talk about the recommendation and next steps. So we do have other gates on county roads. We have 8 closure gates on county roads. It's not a preferred way to make seasonal closures on the 264 miles of county road. We would rather them close naturally with snowfall. It's just easier, the public understands it more. When the road's covered with snow, they know it's closed, and we don't plow them. Hunter Creek Road, Maroon Creek Road, Castle Creek, Lincoln Creek, and Summer Road, or some people know it as Aspen Mountain Road, all have gates on them for various reasons, and we manage them cooperatively with either the Forest Service or the ski company. They all have, many of them have different times of closure as well. Some of them are based on snowfall, some of them are set dates based on the hunting season primarily. With that, Scott will go through the problems we have at Dinkle Lake and Prince Creek Road. And as I said, this is not a new occurrence. This has been going on over the last 5 years, and it's gotten progressively worse. In June of 2019, we had about 992 vehicles go across Prince Creek Road, which was a record. We're seeing more visitation there. The problem is getting worse.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, as you can imagine, Mother Nature dictates how well we can make those snow piles at the end of those roads. That's what we're using. So last year it was fairly easy. Some people still find that challenging to go, let's see if I can make it through there and or actually remove that snow. Last season, whether it was done by a skid loader tractor vehicle, those snow piles were taken down. I've got some pictures to show. So it's really it's just not becoming an official way to close a road at this time. Like I said, there's the high clearance four-wheel drive vehicles. We tend to see those more up on Dinkle in the fall and early spring. I think it's more for a challenge more than anything, and it's just an obstacle that they're going through. There is obviously the impacts to the roads. When the roads are super wet, especially in the spring, and they're going through these closures, we have heavy rutting, and then now we've got drainage issues as the water runs down those ruts, down the ruts, and then creates worse ruts and erosion, and we're just having a hard time then getting out there to recoup and fix those roads early on, if at all. So here's an example. This is Dinkle Lake Road. This was late in the season last year, but this is pretty much what a normal, quote unquote, last 5 years looked like for us. There was minimal snow. We kind of harvested around the top of Prince and West Sobers Creek Road there and push up a pile the best we can to block the road. The challenge is we still want to leave it accessible to the other users, right? There's cross-country skiers, there is some fat bike users, hikers, so we don't want to put a giant mound up there, but we want to try to make it impassable to vehicles. And then unfortunately impassable is just based on the driver. This was about a week later. You can see how much in the springtime, if it melts at all and cars are breaking through it, that snowbank just goes away. As soon as you get some ruts in there and it opens it up to the sun, that bank is not working at all anymore.
And what occurs also in that situation, if there is a muddy area, people will tend to go around that and cause resource damage in the forest. So one of the first organizations we worked with was the Forest Service, and they are totally on board with placing some sort of restriction, physical restriction on the roads, especially Dinkle Lake.
Hey, Steve.
On this photograph, did someone go in with a bobcat loader and remove part of the berm here on this one?
Something was used, obviously, to remove that center portion. 2 winters ago, the snowbank was still there, but to the left there, as you're looking at the screen, they were driving around and causing resource damage through the scrub there. And same thing, now we have this rutting and a giant mud hole going around the roadway.
Right. So we're seeing braiding of roads and trails, as well as just breaching closures that we've never seen. I think you said it's up to the driver, but also with the new vehicles like the Razors and the four-wheelers that can go anywhere. I've heard of these people crossing avalanche slopes up by Crystal and Marble in this spring, before the road was even visible, just going up and over the debris path, which is possible where a Jeep just wouldn't have done it without a lot of effort and winching and all that. In the old days, now it's the four-wheeler can just roll right over it. So mobility is an issue that we're seeing in a lot of these areas.
So this is at the top of basically intersection of West and looking down over Prince Creek. This was taken the same time as that other picture, Steve, so you'll see that something removed a good portion of that snow. And just before we took this picture off to the right, there was a vehicle that sat there all winter long. Person tried to go over probably after the first snowfall, didn't make it, and that car lived there all winter long. You know, a lot of people usually call us first for assistance to get them out of there. That's not an option that we have. So then they usually knock on the door next door or try to get someone to pull them out of there. And this one sat there all winter long. I don't know how I'm assuming a tow truck just came and got it eventually. Some people were doing some early season with shovels, honestly, some shovel work. I'd say, 4 hours, a couple people shoveling could actually get through some of that stuff right after it snowed early season. So this will be, the next picture is the same day. This is part of the challenge too, right? So up top, we had some melting, someone removed the snowbank, but if you're coming from the Carbondale side, you don't realize that there's some, it's a little wet in the road, but you're not really sure what it looks like up above. And a lot of people just, they see the road on their map or are following GPS, whatever that looks like, start heading up there and maybe don't know what they're getting into still early in the spring or even late spring, as this was last year. You'll see the sign on the right. That helped a little bit, the no snow plowing beyond this point. We're just trying to set people up for that expectation of what they're going to find. I don't know that it's changed that character at all in drivers, but it was just at least a sign.
So is this right by the handy drive, and this is where you would put a gate, one of the gates?
Correct, yeah. So now there's actually a buck rail fence right along that right side of where that fence is, open space placed, because we had all the parkers there earlier, well, this about a year ago. Now there's a new parking lot for the trail system, so there's a buck rail fence along there now, and that gate would be right at about that location, correct? Mm-hmm. So like Brian said, yeah, we've had conversations with the Forest Service, the BLM, Parks and Wildlife, Sheriff's Department, Open Space and Trails. Met with Two Shoes last Monday. Representatives from the ranch, ranching families from the area, the Horse Council, and then there might be some other outreach as there's some other properties in there we maybe haven't got a hold of yet. But all are supportive of it. All are in support of it, and are recommending we move forward. Put the gates in.
I think everybody sees the additional use there and abuse and understands that something has to be done to stop it. Many of these people that are listed here would have keys to the gates in order to access, especially the Neeslandics who control the water out of Dinkle Lake completely. They would need access as well as certainly Two Shoes property owners.
How do they get up there?
How do they get up there right now with other snow vehicles or trucks if they need to, if the road permits?
Yeah, and so Two Shoes actually on the upper portion, you'll see on the map here in a second, but they plow, our county service ends. Basically, if you've been up west Soapers Creek, there's a switchback where it starts up to the top there. That's where our county snowplows turn around, and Two Shoes does that next little section. I can show you now.
As part of their development approvals, they are required to do some plowing to their residents.
Right, so we don't provide that snowplow service, they do it on their own. On that last section there up to basically where 6 and 5 are, they do that on their own.
Wait, can you go back, because I
Sorry.
had a question about that one. So the
I changed the map a little bit from what you have now.
Yeah, there's a structure in one that looks like it has access back through. It would not be affected by any of the gates. It'd be on the interior of the gate. So you could go by that structure. I don't have a page on these maps.
I'll have to apologize. I turned in the maps before I met with Two Shoes Monday afternoon. So after meeting with them, one of those maps you have shows 3 gates on it.
Yeah.
And proposal would take out that lower gate at the lower
Bottom
switchback.
one down here
Correct.
that goes back over to West Soapers Creek.
That's correct.
If you want, I can put that up on the.
Well, or just,
Maybe Scott can,
yeah, would you?
might want to change.
I was just saying, I'd love to
That house
look
looks
at
like it has
the bigger
interior
picture, because I'm trying to
access.
visualize where we are here on Prince Creek Road. And
No, that's fine. And I can get into Google Earth if you want to zoom out a little bit
if
too.
you could go to Google Earth, it'd be great, so we can see the general location. That might
Well,
be
that
helpful.
one, that would have been easier, but whatever.
Assuming Google Earth is on here.
Yeah, if you're online.
I like using the finger.
Well, we could have had this up and going by now, but it's okay.
It's all the AV stuff. We have to set it up in
I know, but we
advance.
could have had it
I'll
up
map
and
some more
going
too,
by
I
now.
suppose.
Yeah. Well, don't worry about it. We'll get to it.
you pass that
We're
back to
going
John?
back, okay, John, now we're back to the Plan A.
Just go back to the show.
Let me try to get there here. Why is it not working?
Yeah, that's why we got the old school stuff.
It's on here, I swear. I can see everything.
That's great.
There's nothing happening there.
Oh, yeah, we believe you.
It's a race, but let's just,
Oh, here, it's because of
Maybe that. Okay. I'm like, where did it go? Can we leave it zoomed out a little bit?
yeah, because there, you can see the house, the structures in there.
why this is.
Patty,
the
is that
lights.
the
We could turn the
brown
lights down
roof?
right
Is that the
above
one
you.
you're talking about?
Well, yeah, because if you follow it around, it follows back around, and you can actually, it gets around the gates. So you can follow it, and then it can go up and then come back around and hit,
This house here?
yeah.
So that's one of the Two Shoes properties.
Okay, so they'd have access anyway.
They have a private gate right here.
Okay, that was my question.
Yes.
This gate down here, actually, we're not proposing anymore. After meeting with Two Shoes, well, we thought it would be a decent spot, but what we realized is if we put a gate there, everybody's gonna park there, and then they won't be able to get through that gate. Emergency services couldn't get through that gate. It would be better to put the gate up top, up here.
Okay,
I'm sorry, up here.
well, there's already one going there. There's one there, and so you eliminate the third, there'd only be 2 gates.
Correct. One going to Dinkle Lake Road, one going over Prince.
So people will not come up and around and up, you don't think?
They if Two Shoes plows, they'll go up and hopefully use that upper parking lot.
So people can do that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah, and the county does not plow that section of road, so it's relying on Two Shoes to do that.
Got it.
Which isn't always the day of the storm. It's just based on when their guy gets up there to plow.
Okay,
The person
got
gets
it.
up there.
okay, that's what I needed to know. Thank
So I'll
you.
just turn this off to get back to.
You
Sorry.
back there.
John's got you back. Yeah, you're back.
Okay.
Thank you.
So our recommendation is to place 2 closure gates on Prince Creek Road. The one you saw at the top there, going over in from west into Prince Creek, one at the end of pavement, and then one up on Dinkle Lake Road. We would recommend closing both of those on December 1st. That would be in alignment with the BLM closures for the Crown. And then also CPW made us aware of a late season lion hunt up there. They're trying to, they've got a lot of lions they're trying to take care of up there. So they were absolutely in agreement with that December 1st closure.
Mafia way. Yeah. Take care. We're going to take care of these lions. Yeah, okay.
And then an April 15th opening for Prince Creek, and then actually do a month later for May 15th for Dinkle to allow it to thaw out a little bit and hopefully
Right.
prevent some of that resource damage.
Again, all of these, other than the May 15th date, are in alignment with opening the trails on the Crown. So we thought that would alleviate any confusion that people might have when things are going to open up.
Okay.
Right, Patty. Sure.
Access for cross-country walkers, bikers, and horses could even go around these gates and access if they chose to go in there in snow.
That's correct. And we'd make sure that could happen.
And biking organizations know about this, and even though they won't technically be affected, I don't want them to see a gate, and just be nice to notice them and say, we're putting these gates where you'll have access
Yeah,
around them.
and this is the first touch with this board, and if you guys are okay with this idea, we would continue to provide some public outreach, including the bicycle folks.
That's what I thought.
And then when we come to the board, hopefully, in December with the 2020 Road Maintenance and Management Plan, you would see this change illustrated in that document. And then that would cauterize this idea of placing the gates. And then between now and then, hopefully we would get the gates out there for this winter. We'd like to have them installed.
Great. Thank George.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I'm really supportive of this. I've seen the impacts going up towards Dinkle Lake, the parking area, in the past. I've seen young people going up there in early December doing donuts around up there and just really destroying the lots that we've spent a lot of time and energy and money on, as well as that road. People who get up there early in the winter or early in the spring, they do tremendous damage on that road, and then it's up to our crew to have to go in there and regrade and fix it. So I'm supportive of this, and I think one other entity you may want to do an outreach on would be the Soapers Mountain HOA.
Steve?
Is there any public use of the roads for snowmobiling? Or is it just the East Lennox and Wexner's people going into do their thing?
There is over the snow use on that road. The board
And if
would have
there's a gate there, I presume you're still gonna have a berm pushed up because you have to push snow someplace. Will there be a way for a snowmobile to get around the gate without having to open the gate?
we would have to make sure that that could happen. Of course, they can't go into Wilderness, up by Sopris, but over Prince Creek and parts of Dinkle, that's allowed.
Okay.
Good thought. Thank you.
I'll just show you the maps real quick too, just so we're on the same page. So, can't draw on it. So I hadn't finished the maps yet, meeting with Two Shoes. So the orange line up to the north there, that would be going into Prince Creek. That's exactly where the snow pile is now. That second orange line is that private road, Patty, that would not be gated. That's in the wrong location. The line would be on the County Road 6A there, and it would be just above that white vehicle and that little pullout there.
So I could park there and access if need be.
They do. What might be, and I met with Two Shoes a little bit, is that triangle or diamond, whatever you want to call it, we harvest our snow there to block that, so that might not be plowed in the wintertime. So where people park might just be dependent on what's packed down or not. Historically, they have parked because we have harvested all the snow off those roads to make those snow banks, so it's been plowed. But that would be a little bit of a change up there people might expect to see. We're hoping that they would start packing down that larger parking lot and using that as a main spot to park to access Dinkle Lake area.
So, as you said, if the board is supportive of this, we would have gates in place by early December?
That's the hope.
Yeah, great.
Then here's the other gate placement for the other side of Prince Creek. Basically, it's 20 feet past the end of pavement. We want to provide enough room, so Garfield County actually plows this section for us, would plow up and then back into Handy there and turn around and go back down.
And that's the snow, in the past, the closure has been, the snow banks have been right in that area. That's the one you had the photo of.
Exactly.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yep.
Grasping it, all right.
Just should speak briefly. Two Shoes had a little bit of concern. There is 6 developable lots between the proposed gate locations. So this is a discussion for further down the road. But they just want to know that we're knowledgeable of those locations, and that in the future they wouldn't be denied access because of these gates.
Steve?
Oh, that's a school bus turnaround. I drove a bus up there for 3 years at one time, and I just want to make sure there's a room that if the public starts parking in there, the ones walking or skiing or snowmobiling up the road, that there's room for school bus turnaround.
That's a good point. No, I think we'll move it, based on what you just said, maybe another 10 feet past where that snowbank's been. Historically, I guess the idea is people are going to use the lower parking lot. We know if there's no snow on Prince Creek, they're going to park it in a pavement to put their skis on. So that's a great point, I think, to look at, and we'll make sure we can get a plow truck and or a school bus turned around, even if there's a couple cars tucked in there. Thank you.
And it might just be a matter of going up the road a tiny bit further just to make room for everything to happen that's going to be happening there.
And what does the signage say in there? Is the signage, no, I'm not usually a proponent of adding signs, but do people know that this is an area that has to be unblocked, and it's a school bus turnaround and fire access and all that in that area?
That would be part of the gate installation once we see that, and it's a great comment to make sure that we've signed it appropriately.
A lot of our spots have no parking for snowplow turnaround, so we could sign it simple as that for the winter, at the gate or in front of the gate or whatever we decide, and then hopefully nobody would park there.
Those are usually pretty intimidating. You don't want to block in a snowplow because he can just push you over the edge, or plow you in, or any number of things.
They usually work.
Yeah, that works pretty well. Okay, great. Any other questions? Thanks for the presentation. That's good to see it. Thanks for coming in.
Great.
And I'm sure we'll hear from the public about it. But
Yep, so we'll do a little bit more public outreach and then begin the installation of the gates. And again, you'll be able to formalize this with the road maintenance and management plan later this year.
great. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna keep flying here. We've got on our agenda for today, it's the, setting the agenda for the October 17th EOTC meeting and review of the EOTC retreat report. David Pesnashak is here. EOTC, as we all know, stands for, let's see, what can we come up with? Elected Officials Transportation Committee.
Getting there, sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
Doesn't want me to let me take it out.
Yeah, Scott, about those new signs on 82, don't those make you, irritate you? Those new Clean Colorado signs, there's 2 on either side of town. Have you seen those yet?
I haven't.
Oh, you'll see them. They just kind of popped up like
Very
mushrooms.
shiny, new looking blue and red.
Obnoxious. Nobody asked us.
I'll have to look.
Oh, yeah. Take your chainsaw.
Snowplow will take care of that this winter.
I was thinking a chainsaw. If somebody just happened to run off the road slightly, it would snap the things right off. Okay. We're not advocating for
A
that.
little more thing to clean up then.
Yeah, highway cleanup. Oh, that's right. Highway 82 cleanup for county staff is tomorrow morning.
Those kind of signs make really good irrigating dams.
Yeah, you could, perfect dam material.
Thursday.
Okay. Oh, what did we say? Thursday morning. Thursday morning is the county staff highway cleanup. I'm going to make that announcement right now as I stall you, get set up. But we're ready to roll here. So, okay, let's do it. Welcome.
All right, well, thank you. So this is the preparation for the October 17th EOTC meeting. For you guys, it's been split into 2 parts. I wanted to provide as much time and be coming back to you on October 15th, just prior to the meeting on the 17th, and I wanted to free up as much time on that to discuss the budget prior to the 17th meeting, since it's a little bit more complicated this year. So the items I'd like to go over today is a review of the proposed EOTC agenda for October 17th. I think that should be fairly straightforward. And then get into the EOTC retreat follow-up information and try to get some of that done today so that we have more time on the 15th. So just jumping into the agenda real quick, and you should have a copy of this in your packet. There's 3 main items. One is the EOTC retreat review. So we'll go back through this in the full group. So if there's, I'm able to take comments from you today when I get into that part. But if there's major changes, we might need to discuss those with the full committee on the 17th. And then moving into the proposed budget, like I said, will be more complicated this year, and we'll talk about it more on the 15th after you receive your full packet for the 17th. And I anticipate this will take the majority of the time. And then the last item is a work plan. So looking at everything that we've got going on with the outcomes from the retreat, we've got potentially some ongoing items with the budget and Brush Creek development. I put together a 2020-2021 work plan, and just looking to more or less get an acceptance or a head nod that yes, we're on the right path moving into 2020 with the things that we're looking to accomplish. And then just one update item from Dave Heckler on the town of Snowmass and their transit center. They have had some meetings with that over the last couple months, and they think they've made some progress, and he wants to provide you an update on where they are with that design. So before I get into the retreat items, any comment on the agenda itself?
Kelly?
I just have a question. Will you have information about the use tax for us when you present the budget?
I will.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the bulk of the information in there, in
Great.
fact. Yeah.
And George?
And when we talk about the budget for 2020, at the TPR meeting on Friday, it was mentioned that there is some monies available through the TAP program. I'm not sure what TAP stands for.
Transportation Alternatives Program.
Yeah, $1.3 million. It's a very short lease time frame in terms of getting a grant in. But I think if we can get some agreement to do some matching funds from the ELTC to, again, look at planning and design for the Buttermilk Underpass, we may be able to generate some grant money possibilities. So in the past, NOMAS has not supported that. I'm hoping that with a new governance and a new understanding in terms of how dollars can and should be utilized, hopefully they would agree to look at the Buttermilk Underpass as a critical point to capture people coming in and out off of Owl Creek, and to then try to apply for a TAP grant.
So I think that we'll need to see, in terms of matching funds from the OTC, we need to see where we fall in terms of the upcoming budget. There are some alternatives that I'll present to you on the 15th that I think can keep things moving forward. But in terms of available funding, it's looking to reduce significantly. So I think we need to see where that falls out. And I don't want to miss an opportunity to get funding, absolutely. And in the second part of next year, as you might have noticed in the work plan, we are looking at getting into the Comprehensive Valley Transportation Plan, which I'll talk about here more in a minute, and prioritizing those specific on-the-ground projects. So I guess...
Can I, real quick?
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, you mentioned that you're going to be coming back to us on the 15th. You're also scheduled to come back to us on the 8th also. Did you need that date too?
Oh, no, I didn't know I
I'm
was on the
just
agenda
wondering if
for
we're
the-
going to be seeing a lot of you, so we've got him down
I mean,
for
I'd
an
be happy to
extra.
come see you. No, I thought I was on today and the 15th, but I'll
And
check
the
with
8th.
Charlotte and make sure that
Okay, then I will take
got
that off
straightened
my,
away.
And Steve?
I've been looking at the Brush Creek Park and Ride construction plans, and I'm surprised that the construction's not planned for 2 years from now. I mean, why can't we do construction next summer or start late in summer or something next year? It seems like we're fairly far along on the visioning. We've already done a lot of the visioning stuff. How much more of that do we need to do? And
So in terms of Brush Creek, we made it through 30% plans. Federal Highways Administration anticipates coming back in springtime next year with 70% plans, and fall time next year with 95% plans. And then they've got final budget for construction in 2022.
so
Or
it's sort of
2021,
their
sorry.
schedule more than our schedule.
Yeah, so that's
that
when
we're going
that's where
by.
it fell in their fiscal planning.
Okay.
But we are making, I think, good progress on it. And I'll go through the upcoming meeting dates with you too, and I think you'll see where that falls in there, which may be where you're seeing it. Is there anything else for the 17th in that specific agenda? It should be pretty straightforward, I think. So looking at the OTC retreat and work plan, so there were two main takeaways on the staff side from the retreat. One was to address governance and decision-making. That one basically tied with updating EOTC plans and governance documents. So looking at that, we've had quite a few conversations on the staff side, and what are the best ways to move forward with these 2 points of direction. And so that's where the work plan comes in, and trying to tie that together with other things going on. So what you see on the screen now, these are the points in terms of governance and decision-making and plans and governance documents that relate back to that work plan. So first off, after October 17th, if we've got agreement on the work plan and what the outcomes that are identified within the report from Stephanie Zaza, then we're planning on moving forward with trying to vet and get some ideas from each of the boards on governance and decision-making. After meeting with the 3 managers, there was agreement, I think, to that each manager move forward with each board individually right off the bat to discuss what those decision-making possibilities may be, where each of the boards and councils think that the issues are, and what solutions might be feasible. So I would be participating in those and trying to coordinate between the 3 jurisdictions and then coming back to you to discuss as a full group next spring as a part of your regular meeting. And then, if that's necessary, if we're not able to get it figured out, if there's a lot of consensus, we might not need to do that. And then number 2 up here is updating the EOTC plans and governance. So starting right off with that, again, if there's buy-in to the work plan, having me as your staff dive into drafting a strategic plan for the whole EOTC based on the information received at the retreat. So this would be a first stab. This is what it looks like. And then at the first EOTC meeting, really focusing those meetings on specific topics. So the first one, as you might have seen in the work plan, would be focused on strategic plan. So I would be putting that together through this winter, bring that to you next spring, give you the opportunity to make changes, agree, disagree, whatever needs to be done at that point, and then progress the schedule from there. And then updating the Comprehensive Valley Transportation Plan. After the survey went out from the retreat, that was some significant feedback that I noted, was that people really wanted to get into this plan in particular and updating this plan, and where is our low-hanging infrastructure fruit, where's our low-hanging operational fruit, what can we do now, what needs to be long-term, and this is really the opportunity to do that. But leading up to that, I think that we need some sort of written strategic plan or something that outlines vision and strategic goals to help measure going into that exercise. And then leading into 2021, that's where we would get into hopefully carrying the strategic plan, CVTP, into updating the 93 IGA and potentially developing a new budget framework. So this would be reinforcing, amending or replacing the savings funds, and again, going back to the strategic plan and other documents that we have updated up to that point. So the real deadline here that I've been looking at is 2022. So, and the reasoning for that is that's when Snowmass is budgeted to withdraw all of their funding from their savings fund, so the 5.5 or 5.8 million. So that's when that fund would deplete, and we really need to figure out that budget piece. So that's the end goal that I'm looking for here with this time schedule. At the meeting on October 17th, one of the outcomes that I will need to get from you again is looking at Stephanie Zaza's report and saying, yes, we agree with these outcomes, or something is off here, because if I do get the direction to move forward with this drafting the strategic plan, that's the document that I'm going to be going back to, and I need to make sure that I'm using the right the right documented information. And then again with the work plan and moving that forward. So I guess before I get into dates and things, I want to take comments, questions on this piece.
Comments, questions?
Just to understand the process for the strategic plan. As you noted, you'll be working with staff on that, but then do you anticipate coming back to each jurisdiction, or doing perhaps another little mini retreat and presenting to the group as a whole?
So right now, certainly working with staff initially. So if I get the direction to, yes, go forward, staff, draft, and take an initial stab at this, that'll be a staff-heavy exercise initially. And then leading up to that, I think that we're going to need to see how it falls out, how the draft comes out. If we think that we need to go back through each jurisdiction prior to the spring meeting, we'll do that and get that feedback. But certainly, looking at the spring meeting being dedicated to reviewing that document. Okay. Then the mini retreat, I think, in my thinking anyway, would really be focused on the Comprehensive Valley Transportation Plan. Just by the nature of that document and getting that updated would need to be more of a charrette style, looking at the plan that we've got now, where do we want to go, and doing that in a more concentrated approach.
Kelly?
Yeah, thank you, David, so much. And I appreciate and understand looking out to 2022. I think for me, in terms of staff and manager contemplation of how to frame this moving forward, I'm still sort of, it would be helpful for me to have some arguments pro and con about the ongoing relevance of EOTC. And I think we'll dive into more of this when we look at the funding scheme. But that's just a question that I continue to have about, you know, is RAFTA better positioned in the future to do some of this work? Does the EOTC still have inherent value that RAFTA or something else can't provide? And so I just want to keep those questions at the forefront.
Except
when
for
we
the
dive
fact
into budget and
EOTC is
everything.
mandated by voter language, so we'd have to go back to the voters, I would understand, to dissolve the EOTC.
And the funding situation was mandated by voters, which I think is what is
Well, the
gonna
funding,
inform
yeah.
some of this future conversation.
And mandated to have an EOTC by the, it's actually in the voter language, I believe, so, yeah, that's a good question. We'd have to look at part of that discussion, how we would do that.
And I mean, again, you know,
Yeah.
we are, you know, we have projects in the works to 2022 and, you know,
Yeah.
but that does continue to be a thought for me that, you know, is this still the best framework that we operate in looking into the future?
I think it's a concept that you might want to talk about. I don't know how far we get with the voters whose money they liked having local control over, but it's worth having a discussion, possibly.
Yeah, I don't really think it's an avenue for RAFTA to be able to take over. It's not even noted in their 2040 plan. I mean, RAFTA has specific projects for every community, but not to the extent that EOTC is looking at funding projects just for the Upper Valley area.
No, I get that, but remember this change from how sales and use taxes are allocated was just took place, right, as a response to legislative action. So, you know, this isn't something that I think requires like immediate pivot, but you know, it is, I think, if we're thinking strategically into long-term futures, a question that we should wrestle with.
I'd be in favor of that. I think that EOTC, you know, the problems we've all had with it are pretty historically acknowledged. That it, you know, being nimble is not one of EOTC's. You know, you wouldn't define it as a nimble, fast-moving, quick, you know, just by nature. And it's not that sort of organization. And I think that the purpose of the retreat and the outcome hopefully will help us solve some of those. The way you've constructed this makes sense to me to work with the EOTC going forward. And yes, I think it's always good to determine whether or not there might be a better way and keep that in our minds as an obligation to the voters.
So as we move forward, I think that is a very valid question. And I would encourage you to think, you know, as we move into this, what does the EOTC do well and what does the EOTC not do well? And if we do want the EOTC to be a more nimble organization, then that's something that we will need to discuss as a part of the decision-making process. How do we facilitate it to be more nimble? Or do we want it to be more of a consensus building and, you know, everyone's involved type group? And, you know, I think there's benefits and drawbacks to either direction. And either way can influence how that decision-making conversation could play out. Yeah.
Anything else? Okay, looking forward to that meeting on the 17th. And the ones after.
There should be plenty after.
Yeah. Okay.
So looking out at 2020, and this is just to put it on your radar and let you know how I'm at that time, I think that's appropriate. And then moving into April, so these meetings would be fairly close together, but I understand the Federal Highways wants to get their 70% plans out next spring. And we did have some conversation at the last June meeting about doing some visioning for Brush Creek in terms of what do we want long-term out there? Do we want there to be some sort of information kiosk? What do we think about long-term parking? Those kinds of items. So really, I focused this meeting, at least preliminarily in this proposal, to go through the 70% plans, which I don't think will take as long as the 30% plans, because we've already hashed through a lot of that. And then using the rest of the time to develop, I guess, what I'm starting to call a vision profile for the park and ride, because moving out of this, or from this point, I'm going to need to start to develop a management plan for the park and ride that includes all of these new elements. And so being able to have some sort of vision in mind to be able to build into that plan and at least make it nimble enough to be able to accommodate those will be important. And if we do want to take additional action to allow, say, long-term parking or information kiosk or whatever it may be, then we can start working toward those goals. And then that brings us to next October, crazy enough, and back to budget time. In between the April and October timeframe, that's when I'm looking at potentially doing some sort of mini retreat, so not as long as this last one, and really focused on the Comprehensive Valley Transportation Plan and wrapping up anything that we might need to finish with the strategic plan. I do recognize that there would be a lot at play next year, and I think that we need to acknowledge that we might need to throw an additional meeting if we do need to cover some more territory.
Patty?
Just right off the top, April 23rd and October 22nd, I believe, are Northwest Colorado Council of Governments regular meetings.
Okay.
We have them on the fourth Thursday of every month.
Gotcha.
And City of Snowmass, Aspen, and Pickens County are all members of that.
Good catch.
I'm planning ahead.
No, I appreciate that. I'd rather have it now
Like
than
way ahead.
next September. So that then is everything I have. If you haven't read through Stephanie's report, please do so to make sure that looks accurate.
Thank you for including I guess she included all kind of the data, just all the data points. Everything that we wrote on all the Post-its and all that
it was a good read.
captured. So I appreciate saying, how do we draw these conclusions? Because you can look at actually what everybody said. So
Yeah, I definitely wanted all the raw data in there.
Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you. I think no questions now. They'll come up, though.
David,
I'm
we
sure.
wanted to thank you for the retreat.
Right, thanks, Kelly. And now for the
Rocky Road fun
presentation of the T-shirts.
Oh, man.
for you.
Thank you.
Last Rocky Road.
Thank you all.
Our board baker and
So
pastry
there's
chef
less
has
rocky roads in the future? Is that what you said?
Rocky Road.
Did we
yeah,
say
I love that.
I thought just maybe sugar-coated or chocolate-covered.
Striped.
Well, I do like anything sweet.
Excellent.
Just not before meetings because I get tired.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. And Kelly, thank you for doing that. That's very nice. All right. Okay, I think we're going to move along to prep for our joint meeting with the AVH Board of Directors, which is coming up on October 8th.
Yeah, thanks. And I had a chance to visit with Dave Ressler at the hospital, and there seems to be, I think, a lot of questions. I think some from our own board as well as his. There's a lot of publicity recently on the Peak Health Alliance, and so there are a lot of questions coming from, I think, some of his board members, some of you, to me about the Valley Health Alliance and what's happening and such there. So we wanted to recommend and that we focus a good chunk of that meeting on bringing the Valley Health Alliance and their executive director and board, which in full disclosure I am on, would be interested in coming in and talking about what they have coming up over the next year and year and two to bring the community in and kind of explain the process. I know I've tried a couple times to explain it. It's complicated and it may bear further discussion, but we felt that would be a good central topic and opportunity, since really the Hospital District Board and originally the Board of County Commissioners, our two organizations kind of originated the Valley Health Alliance together, that we thought it'd be a good time to have that kind of update.
Can you remind me or tell me, the Peak Health Alliance, I've heard about it, but I have no idea how it differs and what it is.
Yeah,
Summit County.
it got a lot of press. It took advantage of a recent law that has passed that allowed health insurance co-ops, and so the Peak Health Alliance strategy was to do some use economies of scale by pulling together a larger insured population and negotiating basically a health insurance rate. That is actually one of several strategies that Valley Health Alliance is also looking at, but in addition to some of the quality and reporting aspects too that we want to talk to you about.
Thank you.
Is that all we're gonna talk about?
So
It
that
could take
would-
2 hours to.
Yeah, that would be the main topic, and I would expect that'd probably take an hour by the time there's a presentation and probably questions and back and forth. Beyond that, I do think it's probably worth just mentioning again the success of the ambulance facility, which was really a partnership between both entities. Recognition that we still have the old ambulance facility that will also require some partnership going. Kind of note that we have some requests and we have the housing stability. Make sure you're all on the same page process-wise there. But other than that, those were kind of the 2 staff level recommendations.
Is there, in light of the ambulance building being finished and our celebration and kind of commending the neighbors for bearing with us for one last construction project, I recently was told, and I'm not, that there's one more phase of construction at AVH that's not yet
I do think there's a future phase still. I think they've, and perhaps that would be a good update to get
I think we need to get it out there
through
to
2 or 3 phases.
Whoever was paying attention, but it's a phase between the.
Big conversation, the VHA discussion. And just so you guys know, Valley View Hospital has joined the VHA also. So,
good.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Great.
That's important.
Okay.
I'd be interested too if you could do a brief touch with us about how that has benefited our employee health plans.
Tomorrow on your agenda, you see that we had the solar farm item scheduled to be continued, and that date is to be determined. And so the next regular meeting is October 23rd. Staff wanted to propose that, given the length, I think that item will probably run with public comment, wanted to explore with the board whether you'd entertain a special meeting for that continuance to October 16th, which would be the following.
I will be out, the 16th. I'm going to be out of town from the 17th to the 22nd, but I will be here on the 16th.
So yeah, your book ended by one day on either one.
I'm going to be here for that, Leslie.
I think a special meeting on the 16th.
What else
So
do we
it's
have?
something that we'll be considering tomorrow, but on the 16th,
So I do note that public health had that measles tabletop exercise from 9 to noon.
9 to noon.
And
yeah.
then APSHA does meet at 5. So a noon
12
to
to
5
5, Kelly,
would.
And I do think if the meeting kind of extends that 4 or 5 hour time frame, I'd anticipate that the board would probably be continuing again there.
I think the priority would be to have a special meeting for, as much as I love measles, for the solar. But we need to also, I see Leslie looking at me like she has a thought.
Do you want to come up and join in here?
Yeah.
We're thinking special meeting on the
Oh,
16th.
I thought you were here for Bavarian.
I'm here for both.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
So I talked to Connor Goodson is Res Distributed, the applicant's representative, and apparently the 16th is a tough nut for them. But Rye told me this morning that they could try and make it work if, like, the 17th is not good. So
It's not good. 17th, not
yeah,
good.
it sounds
Yeah,
like
we'd
it's not
lose
good.
at least one commissioner
I'm-
for
Well,
sure.
the 17th is Thursday.
I'm out on
You're
the
talking the
17th also.
16th.
Right,
And we have
but we
EOTC that
were
night.
going to propose the 17th until I heard you say, Patty, that
We have
you-
EOTC the 17th.
Oh, my God.
Right.
Yikes.
Oh, so you're proposing it before 4 o'clock?
Yeah.
Well, how's that gonna fly with the public if we start the meeting at 10 in the morning? I'm just wondering, because the public gets mad when we start the meeting at noon for public comment. So, I didn't know, yeah, I'm
And you won't be here, so we'd have a 4-person board, and
Which date?
we'd probably have a shorter.
17th.
Can't do it on the 17th, I'm sorry.
Okay.
That's probably not
Well,
gonna
then
work.
EOTC that evening.
And QQ.
And
So, I mean, is there other dates that may be possible, like Friday the 11th or Monday the 14th? I mean,
I can't do Monday the 14th, I can do Friday the 11th.
Monday's
but-
a national holiday, Columbus Day,
Oh, so maybe the 14th.
which we don't honor, but other people might.
Okay, that will lead me into another discussion then afterwards. Okay, so the 21st, Patty's gone still.
Yeah,
I also, I mean, I know that's
and then the
the
28th.
last week in the month. There are no meetings scheduled. There's another.
I will be in Denver on the 28th. I have Accra on the 29th, but that's early in the morning. And then we got Halloween perfect.
Well, we get into the 5th week, so normally we don't have any meetings on the 5th week, yeah.
Well, we could forward to, 9th, of course, was Yom Kippur, so we wanted to avoid that. We do have a regular meeting scheduled on the 23rd. We'll just have a number of other items on there.
Either that or we forego measles.
Well, I don't know if you'd have to
don't-
forego if you started at
Yeah.
noon.
Yeah.
We could start at noon. We do have we would probably have to go till, what's it, 5
A long
again?
time.
Yeah,
Which date are you
Apsh's
looking
at
at,
5.
sorry?
APSHA's at 5.
The 16th.
The 16th.
And I don't want to end this meeting at 10 to 5 and then go into an action meeting for 2 hours afterwards.
Well, so maybe we have to end it a little earlier.
I don't
The
think we
first-
give you that much time, George.
I want to go to measles in the morning, though.
I don't know what the measles is all about, so.
Well, and this is why we just wanted to set aside some time to talk about this during work session, so you didn't have to do this during the regular meeting tomorrow.
Right. The 16th to me seems like it's tight. Maybe we start it, we're gonna have a lot of public comment. We do 2 or 3 hours of public comment. That may be all we get accomplished that day, and then we're adjourned soon enough to
No,
get.
George said he,
Well, and basically, you've got to have a normal presentation. So public comment is just going to come at the end of the public
Right.
presentations,
Presentation may
our
take
questions.
3
So
hours.
it's not like we open up with public comment on this, Greg.
Right.
I mean, we're probably,
Most of the time
just
would be
be
the
presentation.
presentation and our questions.
It is likely, though, if we anticipate, if this is the only item on, and you anticipate whether it be a 3 or 4 hour to give enough time for a break in between other meetings, it's likely that you'd have enough time for presentation, at least to begin public comment.
for the first stab at it.
Right.
Because we know it's not going to be accomplished in 3 to 4 hours. I mean, it would be unusual.
Steve?
On the 16th, at 6 o'clock is the Corps 25th anniversary party at the Roaring Fork Club. If that still is, I mean, that's what I have on my calendar. Do you have that, George?
Yeah,
Is that correct?
it's still set.
And I would note that, I mean, on tomorrow, we are planning on, we're going to be hearing the climate change emergency declaration of the climate change emergency. And I want to try to hear the solar farm thing sooner than later. I don't want to keep pushing it later and later. I'd rather try to do it as soon as we can. And if this, I mean, no, the 16th, I think we can make that work. And let's spend as much time as we need to that day.
George, does it help if I commit to being at the option meeting on the 16th?
Yeah.
Sounds like you have other
Yeah.
conflicts. Would that
Okay,
make
so
it
we-
more amenable
looks
to
like
do this
16th
on
is
the
what we're-
16th from noon
Oh.
to 5 or noon to 4:30?
I can do
Yeah.
the 16th.
You can't do the 16th?
Oh my God.
You're coming late to the
Wednesday?
party here, Patty.
I'm still thinking about why we're just not doing it like we planned to do it.
Did you guys talk about the 10th?
Well, we know why we're not planning on Patty's, based on our
We
discussion
have
in
not,
exec session.
have we
so.
discussed the 10th already? Leslie asks.
10th is a Thursday.
Right.
Special meeting on the 10th.
I'm a go.
I could do that.
I'll be out all afternoon. I've got two appointments I can't change.
I'm good the 10th. I'm good the 11th.
11th, I'm in
Tonight.
Denver at CCI.
So we have
October
one person
7th?
out the 10th.
Anyone?
One
could do
person
the
out the
7th.
10th. You can't do the 7th. One person out the 10th works for me. What if we do this on the 10th? We can move it up. Let's get it done, going.
Well, I
soon.
can't be there
George
on the
wants to
10th.
be here.
Yeah.
You're the only one who can't.
But do you think he wants to be
Well,
here?
okay, but if
Trying to
we,
find
no
it.
other days are
Something that
available
works
either.
for
so
Well,
I
we
guess
have
he's
this,
not
we
gonna
have
be
it
here.
scheduled
Yeah.
on the 23rd, right?
23rd would be the next regular meeting after the 9th.
I have it scheduled on the 9th and the 23rd,
Yeah.
right? I have it planned on the 9th and the 23rd.
Yeah, and we're
We just held those
Yeah.
dates because originally it was gonna be
Yeah.
tomorrow. So
Right.
we'd held those assuming there could be potential
Right.
continuances.
yeah, and we.
That's why I held those dates.
So I guess to clarify, we can do the 23rd. We were just suggesting that this item may be big enough and lengthy enough that if we could find a date for a special meeting, that would work. I do think it's probably most fair to the applicant and to the public for there to be a full board to hear this, because I do think it's generated a lot of public interest. We certainly saw that at the Planning Commission meeting, and so to the degree that we can schedule a full board, I think that's appropriate.
And our schedule on the 23rd is not to,
We already have multiple land use items on that agenda.
right, on the
Just
23rd, and the 9th as well. Is it still on the 9th?
How about the 24th?
Northwest Cog.
You're
In the-
welcome.
Yeah. Thanks to Leslie, I have Northwest Cog. I'm free on the 30th and the 31st, but George is the end of the month and.
And
we
then
have
you're
meetings.
gone still the 21st, right, Patty?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm out that day too.
come back into town on the 22nd to be prepared for the 23rd.
Okay, so we're gonna have some busy days coming up here. It's
Well,
either
so it
busy on the
sounded like
9th
the
or busy on the
16th is
23rd.
good for us, just not maybe the applicant had.
Not
Yeah,
for me. I
it
can't
sounds
do
like
this
Patty
Friday.
can't do it on the 16th.
I've booked everything.
I think we need to do a doodle
carefully.
poll here.
Yeah.
This is not working for
Okay.
me.
s-
Well, we had it on the agendas with
The,
proposed
the,
dates, and maybe
the,
we
the
just
rub
didn't do it.
is we need to continue it to a date certain tomorrow, and that's why we wanted to have this discussion today. So we
And it
could
was-
continue it to the 23rd, understanding that's gonna be
Set in
Not-
an
stone.
extremely
We've
long
decided
date,
not on the 9th,
because of Yom Kippur.
but we're having a regular meeting that day.
Yes.
I
Well, we
mean,
could-
the
Well,
part of the-
I would question that as well. I mean, in the past, when Yom Kippur has fallen on a regular date, we've changed that. I mean, sort of like having a public, regular meeting on Christmas Day.
So, yeah, why are we having a regular meeting if we're not gonna have a regular meeting?
And the 9th, I mean, because it's Yom Kippur,
Right, that's what I'm saying.
the primary, for the solar project, their primary representative will not be able to attend because it's Yom
On the
Kippur.
9th.
And we
Okay.
can't do it on the 10th.
All right, looks like it's the 23rd, long day in the
Well,
23rd.
and somebody, the 10th didn't
good
work
for
for
George.
somebody? Doesn't work for
How about the
George?
7th?
Could do it on the 7th. Could do it on Monday.
October 3rd.
I could do it on October 3rd. That's the last
Well,
week
they
of
I'm
the
like
seeing
month,
some
though.
heads nodding. I'm seeing some heads nodding.
October 3rd, that's
Thursday.
Thursday.
Yeah.
I could do it then.
I could do that.
Thanks, Kelly.
How about January 25th?
Is there a problem with October 3rd? This is for a special meeting. for
I
the
don't
solar-
know from the applicant's perspective, but
Yeah.
I can call
If
him
we could
before
check
you guys
that.
are done and come back down.
Right, we've moved it out
We've
for
checked every
ourselves,
other
we've moved
day.
it for them. This is
For-
the date we're
The
setting.
other,
For-
how
from-
about October 2nd also, is,
Wednesday.
Sure.
That's a Wednesday,
I can do that too.
yeah. So that way we could
Second or
maybe
third.
give them some
If you could
options.
call him and.
Let me go
yeah.
call him and come back, cause you have other
Okay,
stuff to talk
so are
about.
we all available the second or third?
I'm available the
Yes.
second or
You
third.
wanna be here for-
George, are you,
Yep, second is fine. We'll have APSA at 5 o'clock.
okay? Kelly, Steve?
We'll
So
just
second
roll
looks
around.
pretty
Good on
good, right?
both of
It's a
those
Wednesday,
days.
second.
So your preference is the second,
Why don't we start with that? It's a Wednesday, why not?
and then I'll ask him about the
your
third.
Or the
That'll
third.
be right.
Thank you.
Yeah, second
Thank
or
you for
third,
that. Sorry
whatever
about the brain damage,
Thankfully,
everyone.
I just got a headache.
Well, just
We're busy
wait.
people.
It's about to get worse.
Oh.
Uh-oh.
Are you staying for the Bavarian?
I will.
Oh,
If she
good.
goes and makes the phone call, I'll stay
Yes.
for the Bavarian.
Okay, good. So, as a condition of approval for the Bavarian, it was a
Highland Bavarian
Bavarian and the
application. Right.
yeah. The board required that story poles be put up and that there be a board site visit scheduled to look at those story poles prior to the final project moving forward. That we had also had a discussion about trying to do it at some point in the fall when the leaves were down, so you would have a better sense of the full impact. That item is scheduled for October 23rd, so we are going to need to schedule a site visit prior to that. We obviously, I think, are in a late fall cycle right now, so our best laid plans may not be working out exactly like we thought. So we may want to schedule a little bit closer to that 23rd, but we wanted to see if we could find a date that would work for the board.
What are
In
we doing
October.
on the 15th? We have a regular meeting. Can we do?
We could do it on the day we don't have the solar presentation, or the day of earlier.
The
Well, that's Yom
15th you
Kippur, and
don't.
I don't know what that's at.
Oh, sorry, I was thinking the second or the third is where.
Oh, you're looking. I don't know if
We're
that's
concerned
late enough
about the
in this.
weather.
We still might have leaves. We're trying to. go
I
where
know
there's
it's
no
a
leaves.
late
Be
fall
leafless.
this year, so it's
Right. Good point. Okay.
it's a little bit more of a challenge. I was even wondering if we wanted to go as close as looking at like Monday the 21st, but Patty, you won't be
Yeah.
here.
I can
I'm
go
not
up
gonna
there.
be
The
I'm-
week of
I
the
won't be on the
14th would be
21st.
okay. I mean, Glenn, you know, going up and down up Castle Creek was saying after the 6th, you know, but I think if you got into that week of the 14th,
Yeah, probably.
I would think we'd be pretty
The
good.
week
with
of the
leaves
14th,
being down.
I'm out during the 17th, and then we have a regular meeting on the, we have, can't do it on the 16th, 15th, we have work sessions, so I was going for the 15th, if we could do that. Move our agenda around on the 15th and do that in the morning and not do board memberships that day or something.
We can figure something out.
Site
on
visit
the
that
15th.
morning.
That's going to be budget presentation days, the only.
How early does that
We
day
can
start?
throw that off and do that in January too. I don't see budget presentation on this. Oh, yeah, it is,
It
2
should be.
hours.
I mean, I think the reality for that, again, it was really just to drive up there, be able to look from the road at the story poles. You know, it's not
Yeah.
going all over the site and whatever. So I think it would be, you know, somewhat quick with travel time.
Well, can't we just have story poles up there for a week and instead, and BOCC can
Go
go
on
up
our
there
own.
on their own? I mean, have staff there?
I guess that's your call. I mean, the
Let's-
condition
if
was
we
that
can't
they,
work something on the 15th, let's just do that then.
I mean, all you have to do is look at story poles. What's, if we're not gonna have a.
I mean, I think it always helps to know exactly, you know, what you're looking for. I think then the applicant is, you know, feels
Yeah.
like they've made their best effort to show you what they're trying to show you. So, I mean,
Okay.
I think it's probably better to,
Some
it as
of
a
us
group
had
if
a
we can make it
really
happen.
good site visit there, and I can't remember,
I was there.
I wasn't.
so it was you two who didn't get
Kelly
to
and I
go on
were
that,
there.
where we
No,
went.
I tromped on
We went
snowshoes
through
with
all the
Suzanne.
buildings there.
right, but so, yeah, I mean, really, all
8
this
feet of
is
snow.
to drive up there
Yeah.
and be able to see the story
Have you
poles.
explained, this is this building, this
Um,
is this building, this is this building.
Right, we don't need to walk back through everything. It's really just the requirement was that they put up the story poles and that you go visit, you know, see them when they were up. So, again, I think we can keep it pretty.
Okay, so are we still talking morning of the 15th?
Well, we're talking sometime on the 15th. John will look at the schedule.
Okay. Great.
And we're still having a regular meeting on the 9th, is that correct? Even though it's Yom Kippur.
Well, I have a question on that.
Well, yeah, it sounds like,
I mean, it's just, I mean, it may impact staff, it may impact the public being able to attend. Again, it's like, would you hold a meeting at Christmas Day?
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
So why don't we plan on,
Well, we should have probably thought of that sooner than, but
well, we didn't, but we-
do it on the 10th?
going forward, we will.
No, what's
Do we have
happening on
other
the
land
10th?
use?
Well, could,
Well, we have a regular meeting on the 16th instead of the 9th, that's all.
The 16th
Yeah.
is measles, is,
That's in the morning.
party,
Before we would have a
it's-
regular meeting anyway.
Core party's not till the evening.
and what there was,
I think that's a good suggestion, George.
I can't do it on the 16th. I have plans on the 16th because we have it down on the 9th.
Well, would you have a meeting at Christmas Day, Patty?
Well, but it was on
That's the
there, so
question.
somebody should have brought it up sooner than today. If it's been on the schedule
Well,
for
they
as
didn't.
long as
Well,
I've had
what does
it,
the rest of the board say?
I
Let's-
think we should take it off
then
the
I won't be
9th.
here. Then I
Well,
won't be
that-
here on the 16th.
on the SAPCA committee, we had this discussion several years ago, and it was like hard and fast. Absolutely, we're not meeting on
Those holidays, right?
two
Right.
Jewish holy days they were just hard and fast. We are not meeting on those days. We changed our whole schedule around that, and, I mean, I would agree with that. I think it's important to not meet on that day.
I'm
and
with
we
you on
missed
that.
that when we did the original calendar at the beginning of the year.
Okay,
So we
well,
could look
Well, we'll do it
to,
next year,
we
and
could
we'll
look to move
fix it
stuff
this time.
to the 23rd. Let's look at it, because it sounds like the 16th may not work for one of you.
Well, 16th is just a regular meeting. I mean, commissioners miss meetings now and
yeah,
again, but we'll
but
still have
there's
4 people.
Highlands Ski Area Plan, there's the pending litigation plan, effect regarding that, that's on there. So,
We'll take a look at that. Is it the direction of the board then that we
Yes.
need to move items off the 9th and cancel the meeting on the 9th?
and what else was happening on the 10th that we couldn't do something on the 10th? Does other people have plans for the 10th?
I think that was George.
Do you have something on the 10th?
I've got 2 appointments in the afternoon that I can't break. But I don't need to be here. I mean, that's why we have 5 commissioners.
Right.
Well, is there a preference to try and move those items to the 10th?
I would say yes.
23rd.
Our workload's pretty heavy, so I don't want to keep canceling days unless we're replacing them with plenty of time. The 10th would be fine for me.
Just figure out which date works best, to put it on the 16th or the 9th.
Are
One
you
or the
guys
other
okay
one of
with
us
this?
won't be here.
The 10th?
And then in the
Yeah.
future, let's, if we're
Seems like
gonna
we're down
cancel a
the
regular
wire.
meeting date, before we put it on our calendars and book plans around it, we'll try and do that in the future.
Steve?
I need to be in Carbondale at 5 that day, and
Which day?
on the 10th, October 10th. I might have to leave a little early if that's.
Fine, that's
if
fine.
the
We still have
case.
the day up here.
But, maybe we get through all the agenda too, is
Right.
very likely.
We'll power through it. Is that enough?
It's not a huge agenda. I think we'd be done in plenty of time for me.
Is that enough for you, John?
It's a huge agenda.
Yeah. We're still gonna have the bulk of the 10th, it looks like.
So we'll look to move it to October 10th, and if there are any items that can't be, we'll look to move those items to 23rd.
Great, thank you.
Or for the applicants, if a better date's the 16th.
Yeah.
And then I won't be here that day, but I can be here on the 10th.
That'll be a special meeting.
It's gonna start putting down.
Well,
regular
thankfully,
meetings.
that's all I had for you on the future
That's
agenda.
enough.
Leslie was gonna circle back if she got a hold of Connor, but anyway, so maybe
Yeah,
she'll reappear.
she can
to-
hit it during open, I can hit it during open discussion too.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're scheduled for a break after our future agenda review. Would you like to take the break?
I just have a few more
Oh, yeah.
things on
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
future agendas. Couple things I know, energy code. I'm just waiting to see when we're gonna hear that again from that group. And then I was hoping to see a childcare presentation, which I don't know if that's coming together. And I also wondered when we still have employee benefit on here somewhere, right?
It got moved from last week.
Yeah, we haven't rescheduled
Okay.
that yet, but it should be coming.
And if and when we do, not if, but when we do something with childcare, we need to make sure it's attendable by the Kids First and the BOCC Childcare Coalition, other members, because I don't think it's a conversation limited to just Picken County government. since we don't-
Actually, I would anticipate they would be presenting. That's
why I wanna make sure we.
That's why we're working to pull together.
And then I've noticed that we have a bazillions of hours of budget coming up, so most of our work session days are pretty booked.
Yeah.
And we know when we do 4 hours of budget or 5 hours of budget in one day, it makes it difficult for us to really focus on all kinds of packed agenda.
Oh, he's
meeting
energized
day.
after those
No
meetings,
matter how much
Patty.
chocolate
That's-
you put in the folder.
Let's see, just going to, so one of the October 9th subjects, of course, is the Picken County Code Amendment, Title 8 of the code regarding effective pending litigation or appeal.
Right.
We're going to be hearing a lot about that. This is on that one's continued to the 28th. Continued from the 28th to the 9th. I think we had some people were concerned about that. If they're going to have time to respond. We've given them some extra time. But this is something that keeps coming up that doesn't seem like we're not running the clock out or anything on this. There's no immediate need to do this is what.
On what?
I'm not sure I understand.
This
The Title 8
the
code
Title 8
change
code
about
change.
About
appeals.
the automatic stays,
If we had to take that and push that back farther, is that something we could?
we might want to ask Roy if he wants a full board for that discussion.
Good. Well, so if the 9th is just looks like it's too cumbersome, that one could get pushed back.
You mean now the 10th?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, the 10th. Yes,
Okay.
that's what I meant.
Or the
Just wanted to
16th.
bring it up that if we're getting overwhelmed, that's something that we can push farther back. That's all I had. Okay. Anybody else? Future agenda items?
Under the public lands enforcement item that's listed for the 15th, will we hear an update about the OHV enforcement and any tickets and fines that have been?
Yeah, and Brian was just here, but we actually are going to have representatives from the Forest Service, is my understanding. Yep.
Thanks.
Great, okay. This game's.
I don't know if the board wants to take a break or just go into
Yeah.
the open discussion items.
Donna, do you have a lot of open discussion?
I've got a few things to go through with
Why
you.
don't we see if we can get through open discussion? We'll break after. Is that okay?
Well, either that or, yeah, we've got,
Staff sitting here waiting, looking at it.
should we jump in?
Sure.
Okay. So, want to start off, we have two
Wait,
legislative.
Leslie did you get a
Leslie's
phone
here.
call?
Oh, Leslie, did you get a?
Update?
I did not get I talked to Connor. He has a team he has to coordinate. He's going to get back to me as soon as possible. I told him this October 2nd is preferred, then October 3rd. So I figure you have until tomorrow at the meeting to announce that specific date. So,
And we're going to announce it whether we hear from them or not, I guess. We're going to choose a date at that
Well, we
point.
can't without the applicant being able to attend. It wouldn't
It's either the
really make
2nd
sense.
or the 3rd or the 23rd.
yes, I told him that, and I said, you know what, you're looking at the 23rd if you can't rally the troops for the
Thank you.
2nd and the 3rd.
And that's
Okay.
gonna be midnight by the time they get heard.
And I assume the meeting would start at noon,
Yes.
because I need to tell everybody as well, too. Okay, thanks, you guys. Thanks
Thank
for your
you.
flexibility, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Well. Okay, we're going to do open discussion.
Yep.
And we have Kara here, ready to go.
Oh,
She's in
there's
the-
stacks.
There are stacks. Sorry.
Laura Silbernagel, manager's office. So what John is passing out, and we talked about a couple weeks ago, is there's an interim committee on the, I don't remember what it stands for, but the FAMLI legislation that was proposed last session. There's an interim committee and they are taking public comment. It is due on Thursday. And so what John just passed out is draft comments based on kind of the board's past policy, as well as checking in with HR on kind of what the county's perception or perspective would be on any future statewide legislation for a family and medical leave program. I know you all are reading that right now. Comments are due on Thursday, so if on a broad stroke they look good, then we can go ahead and submit them, or if the board wants to take some time to discuss kind of the subject matter. Can
Betty?
Oh, yeah, no, I think they look good, because I did take this opportunity to read them, and I think they're nice and succinct, and just as Pitkin County's position, where we are with our own employees, how this would impact us, where we think this issue needs to go in the future.
And if there's any, it was thrown together quickly, so if there's any grammar or anything else, feel free to give me your hard copy and I can make those changes before we submit comments.
And this gets submitted when? What was your deadline?
Thursday. And it's submitted through an online portal, so it won't be on letterhead or anything like that.
Got it. So we can circle back on that.
I guess the only thing that jumps out that came up as a question in deliberating the legislation was, if there's a limit on the number of qualifying events that could happen within a 12-month period. So we may want to specify, if 1 or 2 qualifying events.
Okay.
So that means you can't have 4 children in 1 year and expect to claim.
Or,
Yeah.
You could think of a whole litany of qualifying things.
A child and then an emergency with a spouse and then a
I don't know
family.
if we do want to say that or not. I just think that was a point that came up as far as how do we define that, and if we feel strongly one way or another, we should say
It's kind of a tough one.
Is
isn't
this survey online, like a public survey, or is this?
I don't know. I know it came through CCI. So.
It did, okay. So I'm just wondering if this was something, anybody can
Oh, yes,
comment on.
anyone can.
What's the general feeling about the number of qualifying events? Do you have it? Is there any feeling out there? Because that would be tough. If somebody had a really devastating year, you could have 2 or 3 major qualifying events in 1 year with family members.
But you could say that. You could say it's up to the employer, or something. I mean, I don't know what FMLA.
Yeah, I don't know what if they have what am I a year?
Would you be okay if I just checked in with
Yeah.
HR about whatever FMLA is and that it follow FMLA requirements? Would that feel good? Okay.
Yeah.
Steve?
Also, this kind of legislation is going to go through the meat grinder in the legislature, and we'd have more opportunities for input later on too.
That's true.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm liking what I'm reading on your comments, so.
Okay.
Okay.
I've got 2 others.
Okay, well, I want to look at this more
Yeah.
later, so
Feel
I'm
free
going
to give me
to
your
pull this
comments.
aside.
I'm not sure if I believe you guys all saw, but Senator Bennett and Senator Gardner submitted bipartisan legislation for fully funding PILT and Land and Water Conservation Fund. So there's not as urgent of a deadline, so I have a draft copy, can give to you guys and then can provide feedback, but it follows past board policy of supporting and fully funding both programs, and just thought a thank you to the senators would be
Yeah, I definitely want to do that because I had it highlighted on the email we got from John Whitney to bring that up. So yeah, if we want to just review it and get it back to you as soon as possible, unless there's anything that jumps out at us, I think sticking to what our guns have always been is probably good.
Okay.
Great. Send it along, that's great.
Okay. And then Did you want me to bring up Tipton or?
Sure, I had it on my
Did
list.
you get a letter back
yeah.
from them?
We got an invite to go to Uray, if anybody wants to go to Uray, but then we've had
Is
a
it on
conversation
the,
about.
which date is it?
October 1st.
Oh,
It's the one day we don't have a meeting. It wasn't on our list of options.
So okay, I'll give background. So we sent the letter that you all signed to Tipton's office, as well as there was the invitation to go to Uray to the listening session. And so Tipton's office and our partners have been asking if the board would be sending any representation down to Uray.
Right, and we had a conversation the other day in staff meeting where.
Yeah, Greg and I had a conversation, and this is a difficult one. The optics are, I think, a little bit challenging for us going to another region where a listening session has been set up, presumably to talk about geographies that are
not in that
Don't
region.
yeah, that are in that region,
No, they're
not
talking
in
about our
ours.
region. They're talking about things in our region that are.
Other way around, actually.
They're not
So
going to
the
be talking
core-
about Thompson Divide at the meeting in Uray?
No, there's no, if we go, they would be. Thompson
Yeah.
Divide currently isn't included in the Core Act, and so areas in the
Rec
South,
Act.
I'm sorry, the Rec Act that is included in the Core Act, whereas other areas are, that are more contiguous at southwest corner are included, and so it's just a little bit more challenging to go down and into somebody else's backyard and have that conversation. That said, we have heard from Wilderness Workshop that that maybe we don't need to be as concerned about that. That'd be appropriate for us to bring up Thompson Divide, and they felt like there may be an opportunity to have that discussion with Tipton's office. At the staff level, we didn't see, to be honest, we didn't see much benefit to going down to the Uray listening session, but I think some of our partners do, and so it's like Wilderness Workshop, and so it is really kind of a board kind of conversation as to whether you see advantage to having Pickens County representation at the Uray listening session.
I think if no one is going to go, I think we should at least send a letter thanking them for the invitation and explaining that we really wanted to talk about issues that were pertinent within our region, such as the Thompson Divide and the Core Act, not the Rec Act, but some kind of letter just acknowledging they're graciously offering us an opportunity to go to Uray to this meeting, but that really is not a meeting specific to Pickens County. I mean, I think we should acknowledge it, but.
I wouldn't bother, frankly.
Well,
I did have a conversation with Liz Payne from Tipton's office last week. She called after receiving our letter. I think I told you this. And they made some apologies and excuses which didn't make any sense to me, but we had a good conversation, and I said we'd consider having somebody there, but since then the reasons that come up that we wouldn't go would be that, really not sure, as you said, if they're not going to be talking about core, if we make it about Thompson Divide, and it'll be about Core Act, I'm sure, down there, but it won't be about Thompson Divide. If we make it about Thompson Divide, we're just taking it away from the other entities and electeds that are down there to speak about their particular issues.
in their region where the meeting's being held.
The only value I could see in being represented, or perhaps sending a letter, would be to send a letter to all the people who are attending to say, just so y'all know, we're not here because we think you need the time, but we just want to let you know we're protesting that we weren't treated very fairly in the last meeting.
It's in bad taste. Why invite us to bird dog somebody else's meeting because we were not extended the courtesy we should have been.
That's what I was trying to say.
Region.
Yeah. Well,
You could put that in a letter and send it.
You just put that in a letter and send it. But the reason, I think my concern would be that making sure that everybody else knows about it, because Tipton's office certainly already knows about bird dogging.
No, what was the word that Steve used the last letter? That's maybe taking a bite at.
Snubbed.
Snubbed.
Yeah.
I would just let it go, frankly. I mean,
That's kind of what I
making a
thought.
mound
That's
out of
where I was
molehill.
headed, yeah.
It's not like if we had a meeting here with one of our representatives that people from Uray would come up. and talk about their issues with, I mean, you know, I would just let it go.
Patty had recommended, going back to Patty's, that we just draft a letter thanking him for the invite, maybe using that as an opportunity to document our requests. I don't know if there's any energy on that.
I think that's a great idea. I'd want to make sure that everyone else attending is copied. That's all.
Yeah.
And I will say, I think there are some of the Thompson Divide Coalition partners that are planning to go down, so we could also share that letter with those partners.
Yeah, I just want them to know that we're not going because we don't care about the Thompson Divide and the Core Act. We're not going because it's not appropriate for us to be there. So we have a snubbed bird dog. It's a rare breed.
Are we okay with that? Feeling snubbed is one thing. Trying to be effective and aim for the prize, which is supporting the Core Act and supporting the Thompson Divide, is really the main point.
Just short and sweet.
So a letter to that effect. I think a letter's enough. I don't think I'm going to be able to beat. Yeah, this is October 1st. Do we not have a work session that day, Tuesday? We do.
It's the last week of the month.
We're gonna need to. If the board is okay, I don't think we're gonna have an opportunity between now and this meeting. So it'd really be directing staff and authorizing the board chair to review and sign.
Fine.
Is that good?
Everybody okay with that? Okay, thank you. Thanks,
Yeah.
Kara. Okay. Well done. Keeping us on
Let's
track.
see how you craft this one.
Yeah, right.
All right.
Yeah, show it to me before deadline.
Right at deadline.
Well, we're already there. Oh.
Uh-oh.
Are we still on open discussion?
Yeah, because I have some things too.
And I was gonna move on to airport. We may want to go to board open discussion before.
I thought we were on open discussion.
We are.
Is there any other open discussion we'd like?
The visioning update under open discussion.
Yeah, I have something quickly. I just been following in the papers, the discussion over a city hall in terms of having a gun-free city hall. And I was thinking, reflecting back, that in Pickett County, we have smoke-free campuses throughout our properties. And I just wondered whether we should have gun-free campuses as well as part of that discussion.
How did they say how they're going to enforce that? I didn't read the article. I just saw the headline. I haven't seen the paper.
There's only one comment that I saw in the article. I have not had, a thorough conversation with my counterparts, other than to know that they're going to be proposing this. It looked like from council comments that were in the paper that there wasn't going to be a specific, like metal detectors at the doors or anything like that. It would be more if it was visible.
Campus?
Yeah.
This is a gun-free campus building, just a posting of signage. But there's felony follow-up, and did I see there's repercussions if you...
I'm just posing this for a future discussion.
Okay.
I don't think we have to resolve this today. But.
I think we should discuss it.
And I wonder if because this did come up when public health touched base with us last week about the political topics, or the topics that have a political element to it that they thought would come before us in 2020, that might be part of that discussion. I think.
And that falls in line too, I think, George, with my request that we look at doing, I know we're going to do a evacuation drill, but doing a live shooter drill, because that's being done in a lot of organizations and across the country.
I think it's a great future discussion item. I'd like to put it on. You see various businesses, like was it Walmart most recently, asked people just not to open carry in their stores. It just makes so much sense. It's not like we have an issue with this now, but if it provides any support to other organizations considering doing it, I'd like to join them.
I do have some open discussion.
Patty?
In light of the ballot coming up, and Kelly, when will the ballots be getting mailed out? Like soon?
Probably October 21st, but I don't know if
it'll be soon. And since we have not organized any kind of campaign program for our tobacco question, I'm wondering if we can ask for staff on their own time, if anybody from the Board of Health or anybody, because they have to do it on their own time, would like to help us put together maybe an opinion page letter or some draft letters for the Board of County Commissioners to consider putting into our own language and getting published in the newspaper in support of this ballot question. Thought that'd be a great way for us to show support. I don't want to just say, oh, it's going to pass and put it on the ballot. I think we need to show that we put it on the ballot, we support it, and these are the reasons why.
You know, we have Karen and Risa coming in for the tobacco policy discussion on the 1st.
So it would not be appropriate to ask
Can't
that.
do it then.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
But we can see if there's anybody in staff or the board who, on their own time, would like to assist us. We're not requesting or just saying if there's any interest. We can ask.
And I do think there are some citizens getting organized around that too.
So if you
I think some of the Board of Health members, not staff, but Board of Health members certainly can get involved, and I think they plan to, perhaps we bring them in and coordinate with them.
Well, let's see if we can get some draft letters that the Board of Commissioners can then put into our, I want to get sure we have the facts and the points to make them short and sweet to put in the paper for supporting the question. If we can get them in the paper the week of or right thereabouts for the the ballots to be coming out, I think would be important.
Okay.
And I'll find out. I'll get some talking points from Janice and Alyssa.
We can see what we can do, yeah.
Reminders for our voters.
Okay, anything else for board open discussion? Can we go to the airport? Let's all go to the airport.
Get on a plane.
So this is every other week we're coming back and just giving you an update on where we are in the visioning process. And this is a graphic that I've used before. I'm just going to use it as a tee up. The visioning process for the public, I know the board is aware of this, was set up, and the board appointed over 100 citizens to different working groups. And those working groups are really in the throes of their tasks right now. And so I'm just going to go through each of them. The graphic that's up, this is the really the scope of projects that was approved through the environmental assessment. So it includes the terminal area, the parking and transit connections, changes to the ramp and GA operations, and then the changes to the airfield. And the committees have really been set up to take a look at all of these proposed improvements and make recommendations back to the board about if any of these projects should move forward from the community's perspective, and then if they do, what is the scope that best meets our community values and needs. And so the first working group I'm going to give you an update on is the Airport Experience Working Group. And that group is primarily concerned with the cloud that's over the terminal and ramp area there. The Airport Experience Group is actually meeting tonight over in the library from 4 to 7. And we've moved away. All of these groups were doing similar exercises around values and setting priorities and such from the community perspective. And now they're all diving down into their particular areas. And so tonight the Airport Experience Committee will be doing a Airport Planning 101, where they look at the various kind of guidance that exists out there about what square footages you need for the target emplacements, how many gates, how gates might affect the number of emplacements that can happen in a community, and start making recommendations about the terminal area. You know, how big should a secure hold area be, baggage area, that sort of thing. So they're going to be taking a deeper dive tonight with that information.
And John, just so that anybody who's watching would be interested, the public can go and listen in and participate.
Yeah, these are all public meetings. They're posted. The schedule is on asevision.com for anyone that's interested. And that meeting will be tonight in the Pickens County Library Dunaway Community Room from 4 to 7. The technical working group met last week. They've actually met two times, I think, since we last gave you an update. And they're reviewing a matrix of information. We've identified almost 20 commercial aircraft that are design category 2 and design category 3 that are currently serving in the U.S. and or under design. And we developed a matrix that includes information on noise, emissions, the basic numbers around the aircraft, the size, weight, number of operations to meet the employment numbers both in 2018 and then projecting 10 years ahead in 2028. And that group has been tasked with looking at the goals that were set around emissions, noise, and number of employments, and starting to evaluate and prioritize the aircraft into those that would best serve our community from those values perspectives. And then depending on what design category those aircraft are in, that starts to define what really does need to happen on the airfield. They'll also be looking at GA aircraft. They'll be looking at a smaller subset of those GA aircraft and really just looking at those that would likely fly in here that cannot fly in here today if runway improvements are made, to see what the effects on emission and noise and number of operations is. So they'll be making recommendations about what aircraft would best meet the goals and values of our community, what we need to do on the airfield to accommodate those aircraft, and then looking at also what are our opportunities to green the airfield, whether that be electrifying it for plugging in aircraft instead of APUs running, looking a little bit further over the fence about future potentially electric aircraft, those sorts of things. So,
and when does that group meet next?
Give me just a second. They will be meeting October 2nd. Actually, all the groups will be meeting October 2nd to do a large plenary session. I'll talk about that and then go into their individual meetings.
Steve?
I heard a story of a plane that flew from Phoenix to Montrose Airport, and they weren't able to unload the passengers because the Montrose Airport didn't have the right kind of a whatever ramp or stairs
Staircase.
or whatever they needed to unload the passengers, so the plane had to fly back to Phoenix and put the people on a different kind of airplane and then fly back. So to me, that's a technical issue. Whatever aircraft, the 20 aircraft, we should just verify that we would have the capability of having whatever ramp sort of thing to unload them.
Well, and it is likely, I think one of the things that the group is talking about a lot right now is whether if changes are made to the airfield, are we likely to be served by one commercial aircraft like we are today? Are we likely to have a mixed fleet, in which case you have more likelihood of running into those issues? So we will keep track of that.
Those will be in the evenings, afternoon evenings.
I'm sorry.
Mine is all day, I think, on the 2nd.
Oh, so
It's 4 to 7. I'm sorry.
7.
Yeah.
I do have a question if Steve's going to bring up jetways. Just to make sure, and John, you can probably tell me if it's been brought up in the discussion or if the discussion's even that far yet, that's specific to the open air jetways.
Yeah, so that discussion has come up both in the values discussion. It is going to come up again tonight with the Airport Experience Committee, and there's
The new
different
technology.
Yeah, there's different perspectives to be considered with the jetways. On one hand, we have a community value, and it's been just kind of a long time community desire to come out onto the tarmac and have that Aspen experience right away. One of the things we're discovering as we have our values discussion, we're focused more on things like emissions and you know, the number of gates and how that
Right,
scheduling
but the
works.
open air jetways are a combination of both. It's a jetway that's open air.
Well, those don't exist right now.
I just wanted to know if those have been brought up, because there's a possibility of those evolving, and that would kind of solve the get out on the tarmac or get out on a jetway.
Potentially, yeah.
Just wanted to know.
We don't know that they actually exist or that they would work
Well,
here.
I think we should design one as part of this.
Well, that's a whole nother option, so yeah.
So John, with on the second, seems like a bigger meeting, plenary session, technical working group. Can you
All
remind
the
us
working
who's-
groups will be meeting, every working group I'm talking about will be
Dorhauser
meeting
Center.
on October 2nd.
Okay, and who chairs the groups again? We've got John Bennett.
So the
Bennett.
Vision Committee has leadership on it, which is John Bennett, Meg Haynes, and Jackie Francis.
Right.
The working groups underneath are being facilitated by a combination of county staff.
Okay.
And so in the experience working group, that's Brian Pettit. And the technical working group, right now, John Kinney and I are splitting time on that.
Got it.
The next group, the focus working group, Rich Engelhart is taking the staff lead with support from Kimley Horn facilitators.
Values is Cindy Hoover?
And community character is Cindy Hubin, yeah. So I'm gonna just go back and then vision committee I'm doing.
Great, thank you. Thanks
So
for the
if
reminder.
we do the solar on the 2nd, will you be able to attend if we're still here in meetings?
I will likely have to have somebody cover for me.
Okay.
Yeah. But I don't think I'm critical to the solar discussion. So, Focus Working Group, they had a meeting also last week where they began to prioritize modes of transportation that we want to emphasize to connect folks with their last mile of travel. A lot of discussion about really how do we combine the airport shuttles into a mass transit solution or have some kind of mass transit circulator, but there's a whole prioritization. They're going to be they're working on their narrative right now, so they'll be meeting again on October 2nd also. Community Character Group is meeting tonight. They are looking to finalize their success factors and narrative about what are the more in-depth discussion about the values and how we deem that those values will have been successfully met. Those are going to be the filter really through which all other groups' recommendations are viewed. And so they are looking to finalize their work tonight, hopefully. And then that will go out to all the other working groups to respond to as they're developing their recommendations for the Vision Committee. And then all of this goes up to the Visioning Committee. We're looking for all groups to have their recommendatory work completed by November 13th. That will then be handed up to the Vision Committee to blend together into a final recommendation for the Board of County Commissioners about vision and scope of projects for the airport. We're still targeting December. I think it is more likely, especially given the calendars and the way they're stacking up for you guys, that discussion will probably happen in the first quarter of next year at this point.
Is the technical working group looking at the property on the AOC side as well?
No. You mean on the west side? Right now, they're not, but that is certainly something that they can make a recommendation on. We've been trying to keep the groups focused on initially what was approved in the EA. If the group wanted to, for example, suggest that we should be considering development on the west side for some reason or a change in what's proposed in the airport layout plan. It's certainly something that's in their purview. There just was not any funding to do anything on the west side right now, so we would view that as a future airport layout plan update. That's all I've got
I'm
for you.
just not sure I like a cloud hanging over the airport. A little nervous.
I didn't really think about that when I put the graphic together, I guess.
Okay, thanks, John.
Yep. That's all I got.
I have a question. Just I can't when I was looking at before the clouds appeared there. I know the city has been seeking public comment on the development of the property. That property.
Yeah,
right
it's
across.
right up here. So that's the lumber yard.
Right, lumberyard.
And
I also just thinking, wow, that's going to be, has the county or anybody on the airport committee brought up that as a possible, resource for as property, as overflow? Because I know it's come up.
It's something we convened a meeting because there's a lot happening right now in the AABC. CMC is proposing projects. The city's proposing projects. The fire department is proposing projects. And so we're seeing the need for maybe some more area planning. Our concern with this development is lateral noise. Takeoff is typically the noisiest part from the airport, and that's right about here. And so we are a little bit concerned about the development and the noise impacts in a future housing project. We don't really know what the alternative is. I know some members of our committee were looking at, do we need to push out any infrastructure into the AABC right now? Similar to the question Kelly asked before, as we really talked about the area that was cleared in the environmental assessment, and if they wanted to make recommendations as to anything in the AABC that be maybe a future phase or consideration.
Right. Just wondering if that had come up. Okay.
Also, Greg, they're looking at expanding housing, not just limited to the lumberyard, but behind the Mountain Rescue. There's a parcel that goes up
Yeah,
the
right
bike
around
path.
here, and this map isn't the best.
No, it goes up,
Toward town?
goes towards town, John. It's
Oh, I'm
behind.
sorry, the other way, up
And
this way.
having worked on that site for years, standing outside, that noise is significant on both sides of the Mountain Rescue Building.
Yeah,
Sure.
the lateral noise at takeoff is the biggest impact.
Back off and warm up, and all that happens right down that end.
Uh-oh, Leslie's back.
Come on up.
Oh,
I
come on in.
can't hear you.
No, we're not in executive session. Yep.
We're waiting for Leslie to come back session.
So, you got something for us?
Come on up, I just finished. Unless they have other questions.
Yeah, we've
it's,
solved it all.
I'm sorry to be so dense about this, but
Join the club.
so
What are
I've
you
been
dense
kind
about?
of filtering in. Alan Richmond is not available the 2nd or the 3rd. There's a funeral that he has to be an attendant at. But the biggest problem with the 9th was Yom Kippur, and you moved it to the 10th. Why don't we start with the 10th with solar? The hearing.
Somebody wasn't going to be
I
here.
won't be here in the afternoon on the 10th.
George is out in the afternoon. We could get started. Maybe we could go earlier. Could we start earlier on the 10th?
So we have a regular meeting scheduled at noon on the 10th now because we moved it from the 9th.
It looks like it's gonna be the 23rd.
Okay.
Okay, that's their call.
Then it's
They're
the
calling for the
23rd.
23rd. That's where it is. Thank you for
Should we
trying.
be prudent and just start looking for a special meeting date in November?
The 23rd is going to be crazy.
Yeah, we're gonna be
I mean, in
slammed.
addition to the
packet before
23rd,
I'm gonna
I'm
need
just
a
saying with
packet
budget
before
and,
I mean, that's not a bad idea. I mean,
I'll bring turkey sandwiches for everyone.
And everybody else sleep.
We'll all pass out.
My sense is that staff's presentation and the applicant's presentation is going to be a good 45 minutes,
Oh, at least.
at least.
And then there'll be public comment.
Right.
Well,
And-
then they'll be asked
Board
questions.
comment and question. Yeah.
And knowing that the applicant is going to want to give you a full team presentation, I'm gonna try and make my presentation pretty short for you guys. And
Probably be 2 hours
Then we're
before you
getting
get to
the-
public comment.
I think you're right.
And then if you then, on the 23rd, schedule a special meeting in November to get through your public comment.
Well, I'm just looking at off
November 6th?
Wednesdays. I was looking at November 6th.
It's not enough Wednesday, it's a regular meeting Wednesday because of the holiday. Regular meetings are the 6th and the 20th in November.
Oh, that's right. You're right. But the 13th.
Good for me. Tee it up.
Gotta
and
be
we'll see if that
somebody's
works.
birthday or something.
Fine for me.
I'm free the 13th.
And I will not be because we're having the airport meeting. It's a big plenary,
said you
but
didn't wanna
I
do
don't
so.
think I'm necessary for that
I
meeting.
have that down already as a regular meeting, is that not?
No. in
Yeah, we
November, have to
flipped
move
them.
because of the holiday, we'd be having a meeting on the 13th and the 27th, and that's the day before Thanksgiving. when that
I
is.
did too. I did too on my calendar, yeah.
That's why I have a good old paper calendar.
Yeah, I would shoot for the 13th.
Okay.
Okay.
I
Special
have it
meeting.
on the calendar.
So our intention is to go ahead on the 23rd, do the staff presentations, start to take public comment, and then we would likely continue to the 13th.
You know, it's hard to start to take public comment and then cut
Yeah.
someone off. I don't think you can do that.
I think we should have the presentation in
So-
full on the 23rd and then do all public comment on the 13th.
It's a big jump.
I think it's gonna take us a
Or do you
couple
want to do
hours.
everything on the
To do
13th?
that either.
Well,
And, I mean, if it's a special meeting and it's a public notice, it's public comment and.
so else is on the agenda that day that we can move off, because it'll be
There shouldn't be any. Oh, you mean on the
the
23rd?
23rd.
I mean, I like Kelly's idea, just move it into November, it's a special meeting on the 16th, if that works.
Do it
for
all
the-
then?
For the applicants, yeah.
Oh, that's a great idea.
16th
That
or the
wasn't,
13th?
I was suggesting we
wasn't-
start and then assume we need more time.
Yeah, well, yeah, but, I
So
mean,
start on the 23rd and.
maybe
But
we
he's
don't,
saying
who
we can't
knows?
cut it off in the middle of public comment, say we're only gonna hear from 5 of you. So-
We just
You
put
hear
in a
from
late
everybody
night.
who wants to speak
But-
that day, no matter how long it takes.
Well,
But for
it's-
someone who's been involved in decisions that are difficult being made after a long day, sometimes we would be better off doing it all concentrated at one time, I think, would be in the best interest. But, that being said,
I just think, isn't it likely we're gonna have information that, I don't know, we don't think that this isn't, they're gonna need to come back to us on, or?
Could be, but if you have the special meeting on the 16th, we can then continue it, I mean, to a follow-up date, even into early December.
I mean, 13th.
You mean the 13th?
13th.
right?
The 13th, I haven't got a
November,
calendar in front of me.
November 13th,
Yeah, whatever that Wednesday is.
right.
and just plan to hear it all. And then if there's things that need to come back,
Yeah, I mean,
we can do it on the full cold moon on the,
so I would,
Well,
see if
check
it
and
works
see if
for
they're
the
available
applicants.
then.
I think it's far enough out that we tell them special meeting the 13th and
just do it all. I think
That's-
it's best to have it all done in one day when we're prepared and can spend that time, dedicate that time to this one issue.
I mean, I will go back up there and if there's anybody that, I mean, who cares if it's your birthday?
I was kidding.
Well, it's their deadline that we're pushing up against.
Exactly.
So-
My sense is when you do these things, if it's far enough out, it gives everybody enough time to
Yeah.
rally around it. But I will ask.
That's
I won't-
far
I
enough
won't-
out. Okay.
Okay.
You got it. You got direction on that. You're good?
Yes, so we're only talking November 13th, special meeting.
Yes.
And,
I've got solar written everywhere on my
and
calendar.
APSHA
know,
starts
it's
at
all-
5. So, but maybe you start at 10 in the morning.
It's a
for
special meeting, we can do whenever we
Do whatever you
want.
want, I'm just saying, so,
If we have to start
Exactly.
earlier, we can.
APSHA's at 5?
yeah.
Well, that's good to have a cutoff.
So why don't we
So
start
start at
earlier?
10.
Start it at 10?
Yeah.
And
Have a
and
half an
just
hour
and
break
get
for
through it
lunch.
in the day, take some time out for lunch and
because-
then finish
yeah.
it. I like that idea. And one day makes sense, that's the day.
Okay. You'll have everything you need by then.
We will have all the information.
you.
Everybody will be given a chance to speak, and that'll be good.
Yeah, yeah. Okay,
All right,
guys.
thanks, Leslie.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, John.
And we'll hear that people can't attend because we're doing it so early during the day.
Yeah. Okay, anything else here in our open discussion, airport discussion? Any other thoughts, comments?
So we're leaving at 4, cars parked over by the Catholic Church, is that correct?
Oh, yes, the cars are there, leaving at 4. It's 3:30 now, so in half an hour.
Can I give you the key and have you pick me up at the Yellow Brick?
I'll just meet you down there.
I think
I had one last thing I did
Sure, I don't know if anybody else is going, I don't know why I need to drive everybody.
regarding airport, just in the back of your head, I had an offer from Amory Lovins that if schedule permitting, if any of the airport committees unrelated to us want an update on future of air travel, he's been traveling the country and the world giving presentations on future of air travel. It's different from what I think we heard from him in January,
At our
but it's an
retreat?
open offer. If the schedule's permitting, would be more than happy to come to the appropriate place
It'll
to
be
do
the
it.
And
technical.
Thursday, we're actually meeting with the Aspen Institute and looking at putting a symposium together for November, of course, on the future of aviation in a carbon-constrained world.
Oh,
So
he's
that,
probably, he should be
He's-
invited
he
to that.
could be
and
on
so
there already.
we're going to talk about a pool of speakers. That's part of the reason we're bringing the Aspen Institute to the table too.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Just wanted to say the offer is on the
Yep.
table, and I thought, wow, I should
Good.
share that.
Yeah, no, his name's on our list.
Okay, now the question at hand. George, you're gonna get there, we'll see you there.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll see you down
Kelly,
there.
I have to pick up the Yellow Brick. Where
I'm
am I picking
riding
you?
separately. Don't worry about me. I'm
Steve,
good.
what are you doing?
How are you getting to Basalt?
How are you getting to
Riding with
Basalt?
them?
Okay,
So
we
the-
have
the
to
three of
go
you.
over there, then we're gonna meet Kelly at the Yellow Brick.
I can either drive my car down.
It's up to you, you're a big boy.
Well, it's if I can get picked up at the
I can pick you up, but we're gonna need to, well, let's leave,
So we were right there looking at all that.
or I can just drive down.
no, let's carpool, it looks better.
I've got a ride also, so I can.
Steve, Kelly, we're gonna leave here at 10 minutes to 4, because we need to stop at the Intercept lot and pick John up, and I wanna be there in time. I'll pick you there. Which end do you want me to pick you up at?
Okay, we're done. Thanks, Grassroots. I
East side?
think we can go
East
offline
side?
now.
Okay.
Can we do that on November 16th?
What? Tell you what's happening.